United, if they can pay £200,000 a week towards his wages, loan deal for the season, he's not guaranteed to start, he knows that before he comes, then I think it's a win-win.
Next, after Liam Delap opened his Chelsea account at the Club World Cup, former Blues Scott Minto thinks the striker is a shoo-in to be Enzo Maresca's first-choice frontman.
You know he's got the ability,
Yes.
you know he's got the mental strength as well. It's just a question of Chelsea getting the very best out of him and using him. And with what happened with Nicholas Jackson, of course, in the last game, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be the starter for Chelsea.
Lyon say they'll appeal the incomprehensible decision to relegate them from the French top flight over their financial issues. French football expert Julien Laurent says it's a huge fall from grace under now ex-Palace shareholder John Textor.
Lyon fans want him out of their club because since he took over, Jean-Michel Aulas, who is the historical owner and president of that club, who did so many great things between 1987 and 2019, when he sold the club to John Textor. Lyon were a powerhouse, not just in French football, but in European football as well, in Champions League. But since John Textor arrived and took over that club, it's been an absolute disgrace the way he ran that club.
And following England's second highest ever run chase in the first test against India, our cricket reporter Sam Ellard says Ben Stokes' decision to bowl first was completely vindicated.
On day one, when you got to the grounds and you simply looked up and looked down, it did feel like a batting day, but all of the stats at Headingley show that you bowl first and you bat last on it. And England had a pretty big total to chase down. But that pitch yesterday, for the majority of it, it played pretty well. It was a really, really good batting wicket.
Good morning, everybody. You're listening to Jim White, Simon Jordan and Danny Murphy. We're live on talkSPORT. So, a financial relegation for Lyon. But what might the implications of that be for Crystal Palace? Meantime, Chelsea are into the last 16 of the Club World Cup. What would winning this trophy do for Enzo Maresca in the conversation around the world's best managers? Also today for Newcastle, to become big, have you simply got to pay big? Australian rugby great Matt Gito will join us ahead of the Lions tour. Is it time for Danny to give some respect to the set-piece coaches? Can you teach trust and integrity on the curriculum? And might Rashford and Garnacho end up proving that cream does indeed always rise to the top? Jim White, Simon Jordan and Danny Murphy, we're live on talkSPORT.
100% engagement. Jim White and Simon Jordan on talkSPORT.
Simon, we are in the company of cricket lover Danny Murphy this morning, because Danny got hooked on the cricket yesterday and was telling me all sorts of things from that particular sport in the last few minutes. What happened to you?
Well,
good morning, Dan.
Good morning. I was obviously a bit bored yesterday and I was sat at home doing some chores and some paperwork, and then turned the telly on and a cricket last day. Got quite into it, actually. Quite enjoyed it.
Stunning test win.
Well, I think the last day of a test is, if both teams are in it, it's always pretty exciting.
Yeah.
And then as it got nearer the end, it was still in the balance. So, yeah, thoroughly enjoyed it. Great opening. Well, Duckett and Crawley, wasn't it? That great partnership at the beginning.
Yes.
But I enjoyed it.
Very good. You at times you're into your cricket.
No, I love my cricket. I love cricket. Absolutely love cricket. I love Test cricket. Best of all.
I bet you were good at cricket.
I was I was okay. I loved cricket, but you can take the mick if you want. I
actually thought because you like the racket sports.
I was opening bat and second wicket down to go in number 4. But I love cricket, and especially with the way that they're playing cricket at this moment in time. And there's going to have to be some rowing back from punditry about criticisms of conventional orthodoxy, because they keep on making these decisions to bat first or to take the game to the opposition, and they keep on being told through the orthodoxy of broadcasting and punditry, this is a bad decision. You should never have allowed India to bat first.
Yeah.
And yet they keep on doing this in games. And there's been 2 or 3 occasions where I've seen some of our guys, John Norman included, have gone, that's an appalling captaincy decision. What are they thinking? And yet they go and do it. Now, I don't know, when I spoke to Stuart Broad a year ago and even Ian Botham about this Bazball phenomenon, none of them really understand what it is. They don't understand what it is. They think it's a construct of the media. All it seems to be is attacking cricket, and that's what anyone should want to be.
Right.
And because of the change of cricket from T20 to limited overs cricket that's now morphed into Test cricket, you're now seeing really interesting tests where runs are being scored, wickets are being taken, and draws aren't the stable order of the day, are they?
Although yesterday there was some
mentioned this.
No, but there was some brilliant defensive batting and tactical batting. They weren't just trying to smash it out the park.
All right, let's not overdo it.
At times.
Yeah, look, you watched the cricket for 20 minutes yesterday.
No, I didn't. I did about 4 hours.
What they did was they hit the bad balls.
Yeah.
When the bad balls were there, they hit them.
All right, okay. Even though I was educated in Scotland, I was at a cricket-loving school. I was at a cricket-playing school.
Did you play cricket in Scotland?
Yeah, we played. Yeah, I wasn't all that. We weren't great. We were all. Yeah,
prefix fag, someone that runs after them, not the home, the abusive terminology, but the running around little lackey boy.
Excuse me, look at me. You're looking at the former head boy of Kelvinside Academy.
How many was in the class?
I played first 15 rugby.
So what score is this?
I played Kelvinside Academy.
So let's have a look up the alumni of that score and see if he's featured in it.
Yeah, look at the what?
The alumni.
the alumni. Yeah, well, we did Latin as well. Amor massa mat.
It's got nothing to do with Latin. It's got to do with students that have left and gone on to achieve extraordinary things.
Yeah. Now, Kelvinside Academy head boy, just saying. Then went through to Edinburgh to Napier College. Well, Danny,
are you the most successful person to come out of that academy?
You're looking at him.
Really? So, yeah.
Absolutely.
Google it.
A lot to get through this morning. Incidentally, Simon, producer Luke and I and assistant producer Joe were at the Tricks Awards last night, Grosvenor House Hotel. Very nice it was too.
My old home.
And we were nominated, Best Audio Show. Who won it, Luke, again? It was Jamie Hart Breakfast won it, apparently.
Okay.
And we gave it... Really? So that was that.
Isn't that one that has Frankenfurter on it? Amanda Holden.
Amanda Holden, I think, is on that very show, and I think we'll leave that when we're and move on at this particular stage. But it was a very enjoyable night, and the great and the good from the world of broadcasting were there, and they very much liked this show.
You must have got an interview with someone we're excited about later.
No,
I'm not talking Gary Player, but we are. You must have got someone on.
There were a few Love Islanders in there, a few like reality TV show people. There's an EastEnders table as well, a couple of EastEnders tables. Like, hi, how you doing? And most of them are saying, "Is Simon with you, Jim?" And no, he's not with me tonight. But anyway, the show is much appreciated in the world of broadcasting.
I feel like I've missed out. Wasn't it an afternoon do?
Strangely, you had to be there at 3:30 in the afternoon. And the thing, Dan Walker, ex-BBC, was on stage as mine host, and you would have enjoyed it. I left about 8 o'clock, and it was only about halfway through it. But that was it. I'm just saying. This all started with you watching the cricket.
I know.
We've got to get into the show this morning.
We've gone on to even more boring topics.
We'll get into the Club World Cup. Chelsea progressed. I want to get into this, Simon, because obviously you have been in communication with John Texter. It's not often we'd lead the show with a story from the French Ligue 1, but this particular tale is very much intertwined with the Premier League, Crystal Palace and the French club Lyon, all due to the ownership of the American John Texter. Overnight, Lyon relegated to Ligue 2 due to financial issues which they were deemed not to have satisfied. They were threatened with this in November. If they didn't sort it out, they might hit problems. Well, they have hit problems, and they've been relegated. Lyon are appealing it. This comes at a time when Textor's involvement in both Lyon and Palace has caused issues with UEFA regarding multi-club ownership as something they need to look at. The result has seen Palace now threatened with demotion from the Europa League. So to help to avoid this, in the last few days, Textor has sold his shares in Palace, but that might not be enough, as it came after UEFA's deadline for participation in the Europa League. Lyon's relegation has now really muddied the waters, as it remains unclear whether their Europa League qualification is now null and void. Simon, I mean, does this make the Palace-Lyon Europa League situation any more clearer, or does it add an extra layer of confusion?
Well, again, from the outset, I've always said, and I think Stefan Borson, who came in the other day, said before Textor had even sold his shares, that we believe that Palace would be able to navigate their way through this situation, and that it would be an incredibly unfortunate and probably unjust set of circumstances that enabled them not to play in this competition. And even more so if Textor has divested himself of the shares that he's got and taken a haircut to do it, which he has done.
But that's after that deadline, isn't it? March
But there are lots made of these deadlines. But these deadlines were changed a year ago from being June the 1st down to March the 1st. There was a lot of noise made about Marinakis doing it at Nottingham Forest and putting himself in a blind trust, but he didn't do it in time. He did that in April. And Forest were expecting to be able to overcome the barriers to entry, because when we talked about Forest and Marinakis putting himself into a blind trust, which by the way is ludicrous, because if Nottingham Forest needed money, who are they going to go to? They're going to go to Marinakis. So the fact his shares are in blind trust and he no longer has decisive control is a load of old cobblers.
But we're on the 25th of June. We're almost out of June.
Yeah.
Qualification for the Europa League gets underway fairly soon. And it's totally up in the air regards Palace's involvement and Lyon's involvement.
Well, it is as far as transparency is concerned. As far as those that may be making the decision and those that are going to be the recipients of the decision, maybe they have a clearer view of it.
Right.
And you have to look at this in the rounds. A lot of adverse publicity. I don't understand the French situation in terms of what's happened at Lyon, in terms of what the PSL governance over there, if there is indeed any, because not only are they having to comply with the obligations of their own league, they'll have to comply with the UEFA. And I don't think there's been any indication that they weren't going to be accepted into the Europa League, and Europa League has some governance issues around it. So the fact that Lyon were able to potentially play in the Europa League, and the UEFA's regulations seem to be tighter than most other football domestic regulations. So It's very curious to see the peculiarities of why Lyon, they're going to appeal, and if you read the text from Lyon, from their directors and from Textor, which is they're absolutely gobsmacked this decision has been made, you must expect potentially a robust appeal.
Defence.
Yeah.
I mean, gobsmacked they may be, Simon, but this is the current state of affairs. They're looking at football in Ligue 2 next season.
Yeah.
Their participation in the Europa League is now seriously in doubt, as is Palace's, because Textor has sold his shares in Palace, as I said. I think something that was confirmed to you the other day by him.
But it's true, yeah.
To your man that owns the New York Jets.
And he expects, and John expects the outcome to be that Palace's position is maintained in Europe.
Well, possibly, but it came after UEFA's deadline for participation in the Europa League. That said, Julien Laurent, who is an expert on all things French football, he gave his reaction last night to the news that was just in at that time that Lyon were relegated.
John Textor happened. And I mean, I don't know how Crystal Palace fans feel about him, but he almost cost them a place in the Europa League next season. But Lyon fans want him out of their club because since he took over, Jean-Michel Aulas, who is the historical owner and president of that club, who did so many great things between 1987 and 2019, when he sold the club to John Textor. Lyon were a powerhouse, not just in French football, but in European football as well, in Champions League. But since John Textor arrived and took over that club, it's been an absolute disgrace the way he ran that club to the ground, really, because to the point that being relegated now in the second division because your debts are so high and you can't actually offer a proper plan.
So Julien, very outspoken about Textor's involvement and his time at Olympique Lyon.
But in defence of John Textor, which I have no reason to be, this is not true.
What's not true?
John Textor gave Crystal Palace £180 million, which Steve Parish and the other directors put in their pockets and used to fund the football club through COVID. Those are facts. It was Steve Parish has ran this football club. He has decisive influence over it. The testification in front of UEFA was to prove that Parish has decisive control. It was Parish's responsibility to say to Textor in March, we are in the FA Cup, we could qualify for Europe, we need to look at this investment. They took this investment. The shareholders of Crystal Palace, which are Parish, Harris and Blitzer took the money from Textor, sold in the shares, and they retain the control, so it's upon them. Now, if Textor sat there like a dog in a manger going, I refuse to do that, then we can say it's Textor. Julian Lorenz does not know that, so he cannot make the observation about Crystal Palace.
No, but he's talking about the Lyon situation.
Right, so let's go to the Lyon situation. What is it they're being sanctioned?
Can you deny the fact that Textor, and I know you're not in any way putting up a defence for him, but to me, the simple fact of the matter is, as Julian said, Textor has been sitting at the top of a French club, which is a proud French club and a force in French football, which has just been relegated to League 2 because of serious financial irregularities.
But what is the sanctions? Because in this conversation, and I don't like to fly blind, I like to try and be the smartest person in the room with information.
Sure.
But the reality of it is I don't know what they're being sanctioned for. Are they being sanctioned for not paying wages? Are they being sanctioned for illicit payments?
Huge debt. Because of serious financial issues.
Okay, so let's get it right then.
So it's 175 million.
If you're going to sanction someone for debt, why haven't Manchester United been sanctioned for debt? Why a whole raft of clubs being sanctioned for debt?
I don't know, but those appear to be the rules in France.
I assume that the rules in France are more strident and more stringent. So for Julian to be going off at the mouth about what's happening in England, which he doesn't have any visibility of, he should park it up, and someone should explain exactly what the governance is around the French authorities sanctioning somebody that doesn't appear to have been sanctioned by UEFA. And I would expect UEFA's domestic or policies around financial regulations to be quite strident, because we've seen it. We've seen Real Madrid have to sell their training ground to comply with it. We've seen other clubs being sanctioned under UEFA regulations, including Man City. So what is it they're being sanctioned for? And then you and I can have a strident conversation about whether John Textor is a devil incarnate.
Oh, I mean, the simple fact of the matter is they've been relegated.
Indeed.
Says they did an audit of their finances, and if they'd be officially triggered, the relegation would be officially triggered if Lyon failed to satisfactorily improve their financial situation before the end of the season. They've done it after because they've sold a couple of players.
So, in all things being equal, does that, in real terms, and it feels like I'm defending Textor, what I'm trying to do is get a framework of a conversation, right? But when Nottingham Forest sold Brennan Johnson, they held off the sale of Brennan Johnson to get more dough for him, and it triggered a consequence, which was points.
You're right.
In this instance, Lyon have sold a player that perhaps rectified the financial situation, and it's triggered a relegation. Now, I don't know about you, but that feels like a very strident set of offences, and maybe that's the world we're in now. Maybe financial governance is so important, because ultimately, that's not going to say, if Lyon are in such a bleeding mess, they're going to be an even bigger bleeding mess now, aren't they? Because they're out of the French league, which albeit...
And they've sold their best players.
So how's that helping anybody? So
they are appealing. So that is going to kick it into the long grass further, and it's going to take time.
I imagine they are.
But the fact of the matter is, they've had a fire sale with Maxence Quadri going to Coma and Ryan Cherky going to Manchester City. But you normally, the key players.
But I'll ask you a question again. What we normally see when a club's in absolute disarray is people don't get paid. I'm not hearing that about Lyon. I'm not hearing the players are not being paid and all this sort of stuff. So clearly they're meeting some sort of obligations, because we see it in this country. We see Sheffield Wednesday not paying their wages. We see Reading. We see other people with
leagues. That's a fair point.
And all of a sudden they get sanctioned because they're not able to meet the obligations. And that gives you... These guys have got debt. And they seem to be able to pay their way.
But they're being threatened with the relegation before the end of the season. To try and raise the funds or eat into that debt, if you like, by selling players. They couldn't do it. The window was closed.
Exactly one of the reasons.
We'll try and put a bit more meat in the bones of this as we go along this morning. But certainly, there is a situation which has now developed, and a serious one, for the two clubs, Olympique Lyon and, in the background, Crystal Palace. And in the middle of all of this, John Textor. We'll get more information before we go at 1. Jim White, Simon Jordan, Danny Murphy, live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. Good morning, everybody. Wednesday morning, that means Danny is in our midst. Danny with us all the way through until 1 o'clock. A lot going on out there. We're right across the lot. Newcastle United, there's a pressure on them now to sell Alexander Isak. We're going to get to that, get to a whole bunch of moving and shaking stories in the world of transfers. But for the moment, we're stuck on this story regarding Lyon, regarding Crystal Palace, and regarding John Textor. As Matt Lawton and Martin Ziegler said in the Times this morning, the ongoing threat to Crystal Palace's participation in the Europa League next season may have evaporated somewhat after Lyon, the French club, which had been part of the same multi-club ownership model, were relegated to Ligue 2 because of serious financial issues. So, Simon, no matter what, because of those serious financial issues, and John Textor is a man at the top of Olympic Lyon,
he has to take responsibility of it.
All fingers are being pointed in John Textor's direction.
And I'm assuming he will know the rules, and if they are in breach of the rules, then he shouldn't be so surprised. I mean, he's made statements during the course of the year, hasn't he, about no chance the club will be relegated. So I'm assuming that he knew the rules, and if he's breached them, we're going to have the consequences. The thing that I'm most wanting to push back on is the Crystal Palace situation, because there's a challenge in this world that, a lie's halfway around the world before the truth gets its boots on. And the fact is, if you allow narratives to create, if you sell 43% of your shares to one shareholder, and you've chosen to do that, and you still retain controlling influence over the football club, whose fault is it? Whose fault is it? The guy that bought the shares? The guy that buys the shares, that gives you the money that you put in your pocket and then use to bankroll the club, it's his fault that you didn't deal with the administration side of things when you run the football club. How can it be his fault? You can't take a fella's money, put it in your pockets, bankroll the club through COVID so the club's in a decent position, and have the wherewithal to be able to push forward with it. And
is this what you're saying? Are you back round to the Crystal Palace situation now?
Because it's the only one I can speak with any great coherency on, because the reality of the situation surrounding the French one is muddled in the complexity of the French governance. And I don't think anybody in this room understands it, and I'd like to have somebody on from France that says, this is the governance that overrides French football, and this is what they breached, right? Because it seems to be a simple debt criteria. Now, debt is debt. Everyone's in debt. When you buy a bloody house, you're in debt. If you breach the rules of your mortgage, your house gets repossessed. So I understand he's responsible for it, so he has to take the consequences. I'm not defending him on that. And I'm not just attacking Palace because I don't like Parish, but I'm looking at it through the eyes of someone that's fair and say, how can you put £170 million in a football club that the shareholders put in their pockets and bankrolled the football club with the rest, right? And took it through a very difficult period through COVID when they didn't have any money, and then not deal with the administrative side of things, and then point your finger at the fella that gave you the money, and you're the ones that sold him the shares in the first place.
Which is what you're saying Parish is doing at Textor at the moment.
But you're the ones running it.
Well, it's more of a media narrative, isn't it?
But that's my point, Danny. But that's my point.
Parish is probably taking some responsibility. He's probably sitting there thinking, I should have dealt with this.
But as you make your point, Simon, it does come over. It does come over that you have an axe to grind with the current Parish Crystal Palace ownership.
No, I allowed narratives to be created, and I've tolerated them for years and never corrected them because people will just say you got bad blood. But I'm not going to allow another narrative when the question's being put to me. I'm not going to bat for John Textor. Get up, John, and do it yourself.
I understand
when
that.
You're talking to me about
but Simon, have Lyon or not been relegated to Ligue 2? Yes, they have.
Yes, indeed, and I'm not seeking to defend it.
So it looks bad in John Textor because it has to look bad on him.
Of course it does.
Well, the irony is, if they're relegated to League 2 and banished from European competition, which I don't know whether that is an add-on to it, but if they were, then the Palace problem goes away.
But let's not conflate the two issues. The only thing I'm doing is separating the issues. Yeah. But the question was, we were responding to what Julien Laurent has said on there about calling on a media onslaught for the fella that's bankrolled Crystal Palace Football Club without the facts behind it, and I don't like it. I think if it was done to anybody, even someone I didn't like, I would still feel defensive of them because I don't think that's right.
You see, the way it's coming over this, Simon, there's Ian in Liverpool. I'm listening, guys. Simon defends Moneyman Textor but blames Parish at Palace. Blames Moneyman Mashiri but defends Chairman Kenwright. Is there a bit of double standards going on here, Simon? Asks Ian from Liverpool.
Well, think about it. If you can see both sides of the equation and you're united on one front, so I defend the moneymen and don't defend the moneymen. So what I do is I call it out as I see it. Yeah. So the person's making the exact point of what I do, which is I don't just defend the moneymen. I defend the people that are in positions of influence and the people that are in positions of finance. Yeah. So I don't have a uniform approach to it because by that very statement, clearly I don't.
The waters have been muddied. And no doubt Palace fans want to... All the news you want to hear, Crystal Palace fans, is yes, having won the FA Cup, you can play Europa League football next season. And that is totally understandable. But what does it mean now? Because the man in the middle of all this, for you and for Lyon, is John Textor. And Lyon have paid a heavy price for financial irregularities and have been relegated to Ligue 2. Simon is making a good point. We need to get clarification from this, from France. So I tell you what, we'll do that next. Jim White, Simon Jordan and Danny Murphy live in talkSPORT. With Selco is where the trade goes.
Could it be Camp Nou beginnings for Marcus Rashford? We gather Barcelona are exploring a loan move for the United outcast. Roy Jennings thinks it's amazing fortune for the forward.
He must have an element of imposter syndrome at the moment. He can't believe his luck. But if he gets the move and he applies himself, it could be the coming of age moment that he needs. Could be the making of him, because he will never get an opportunity like this again.
While Gabby Agbonlahor believes it's a deal that could suit both parties.
If they can pay £200,000 a week towards his wages, loan deal for the season, he's guaranteed to start, he knows that before he comes, then I think it's a win-win.
Next, after Liam Delap opened his Chelsea account at the Club World Cup, former Blues Scott Minto thinks the striker is a shoo-in to be Enzo Maresca's first-choice frontman.
You know he's got the ability.
Yes.
You know he's got the mental strength as well. It's just a question of Chelsea getting the very best out of him and using him. And with what happened with Nicholas Jackson, of course, in the last game, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be the starter for Chelsea.
And following England's second highest ever run chase in the first test against India, our cricket reporter Sam Ellard says Ben Stokes' decision to bowl first was completely vindicated.
On day one, when you got to the ground and you simply looked up and looked down, it did feel like a batting day, but all of the stats at Headingley show that you bowl first and you bat last on it.
Wednesday morning, Chelsea are into the last 16 of the Club World Cup. What would winning this trophy do for Enzo Maresca in the conversation around the world's best managers? We'll get to that, Chelsea fans. We'll return to the Club World Cup very shortly. It's Jim White, Simon Jordan and Danny Murphy. We're live in talkSPORT this morning. Live, of course, on YouTube and your smart TV. You can watch the show as well as listen to it. What we're trying to do at the moment is make sense of a pretty complex situation involving Crystal Palace, FA Cup winners, Olympique Lyon, and the fact that Olympique Lyon have been relegated to Ligue 2 in France because of financial irregularities. And why we're looking at these two clubs in particular, because of one man in particular who has considerable involvement with both. And he is the American businessman John Textor. Overnight, Lyon were relegated to the second division in France due to financial issues, which they were deemed not to have satisfied. They were threatened with this in November if they didn't sort things out. They were deemed not to have done that, and now they've dropped down a division. But where did Palace come in this? Well, John Textor's involvement with Crystal Palace somewhat muddied the waters as to whether or not Palace would be fine to compete in the Europa League, having won the FA Cup. Now, in the last few days, John Textor has sold his shares in Crystal Palace, but that might not be enough, as it came after UEFA's deadline for participation in the Europa League. Lyon's relegation has muddied the waters, and now it's unclear whether or not they'll play Europa League football next season as well. So we'll try and make sense of this for you right now. And the experienced journalist Eric Bilderman, who is a regular contributor to this show, works for L'Equipe newspaper in France, joins us live. Eric, good morning to you. First things morning, first, Jim. Thank you so much for joining us. Simon's with me, so too is Danny. So we very much got Crystal Palace in our minds here, because from an English perspective, it's them who matter to us here. So let's start with Olympique Lyon. And Textor owns them. Can you confirm to us this morning that the news is right, that Lyon have been relegated to the second division in France?
This is correct, and this is also correct that Lyon has made an appeal, and there will be a new session to confirm or not the relegation. The main point is that the financial loss over the years of Olympique Lyon is nearly reaching £400 million, which is absolutely huge. Behind that, Lyon have shown to the French financial authorities a budget for the next season, saying that some money, about £30 million, will come from the sale of Crystal Palace, but this is just a promise. So far, the money from the sale have not been registered by Premier League, and that the money from the sale is not yet in the pocket.
I see.
So that's the first point. Second point.
Go on.
Sorry. No, please come on.
So Eric, just to be clear, they've been relegated to the second flight in France. They were running up debts close to £400 million.
Yeah. And
John Textor, the owner of Olympique Lyon, is the man in the middle of all this. So, I mean, how are the fans of Olympique Lyon reacting to this news?
Oh, they react in despair. Because 8 months ago, the sentence, the point was already made by the financial French authorities that they are going to be relegated if they don't bring fresh money. So they are completely in despair. And also the fact that John Textor comes with words and not fresh money. The fresh money comes from the sale of Ryan Cherky to Man City with around £40 million. But behind that, Textor said yesterday, we shall sell players from Botafogo. Botafogo is also a sister club. It's not only Crystal Palace Lyon, it's also Botafogo in Brazil. And the players that we shall sell, the money will be directly brought to Lyon. So it's a very difficult story to understand because there are 3 clubs in turmoil, and the money can go from one pocket to another pocket, save one club. So the French authority, they don't believe in the words, they just believe in the money.
Right. So are Lyon now unable to play in the Europa League as a result of their relegation?
So far, we don't have this point because they can still play Europe and be in the second division. They were having some money to give to UEFA, which they finally paid. It was a very small amount of money. I think it was £2,000. But with this £2,000, they couldn't be registered to European football games. They did pay it. So far, we do believe that they can still compete in Europe from our perspective.
All right, Eric, I'm hearing you. So, Simon, what does that mean for Palace if Lyon can take that Europa League spot?
I want to go back to Eric and ask him a question. You talk about them being 425 million euros in debt. They haven't lost 425 million euros in the last 12 months, have they? They're 400.
No, it's not in the last. Right. It's a full time.
Okay. It's a debt liability. Situation. Right. So what is the governance that consequences them? Because in the UK we've got Manchester United £600 million in debt. We've got Tottenham Hotspur £700 million in debt. So what is the governance in France that says to a team that's £400 million in debt that people might not like, that are selling their players to service some of that debt? What is the governance that's now saying that is unacceptable? The consequence of that is you get relegated.
Because it's every year worse and worse, and every year it's words and words from Lyon.
But are they meeting their financial obligations? Because it seems to me that they pay their players. When we see a club in England go into trouble, players don't get paid. They don't meet their financial obligations. Is that happening with Lyon?
No, it's worse than this. The players are paid, but all the companies working with Lyon, catering and security services and parking and things, they don't get paid. They are struggling like hell to get paid. Hundreds of people working for Lyon have been sacked under financial situation problems. So they have sold the women team, 8-time Champions League winner. They have sold the football team. They have sold the basketball facilities, stadium. So altogether, they sell everything. They don't pay the people who are waiting for the money, except the player, and they get rid of 100 workers. So altogether, it's something it's going to end with bankruptcy.
Eric, you're there in France. We're here. And as I said to you earlier, we're looking at this from a Crystal Palace point of view. Sure. We want Crystal Palace FA Cup winners who've earned the right to play in the Europa League to play in the Europa League. You're an experienced journalist, Eric. Having got to know you over the years you've come on our show, I understand that you're on top of these situations. Is it your gut instinct that now that John Textor has sold his shares in Crystal Palace, that Palace will be able to participate in Europa League next season?
I do believe they will. I do believe UEFA is a fair referee of football, and also that they can respect sports on the field. Palace has won to qualify. The fans are looking for that. The club is looking for that. The sale of the club from John Textor means that even if the final signature has not been confirmed, I don't believe that you can do such a crime to Palace. I really feel is more worries of legal situation than really on the sports matter. I do believe UEFA will give a green line.
Eric, the club, your club in France, Lyon, have put out a very robust statement saying that they expect to appeal, or not expect to, they're going to appeal. They're going to appeal very robustly, and they've got a very strong argument to suggest that the sanction has been put on them is absurd. What is the reaction to what is your expectation of such an appeal?
Yeah, the appeal can only be available if behind John Textor ARES, the American fund company, who is giving the money and investing the money, and John Textor is just a go-between in the middle of it. If they do feel that they have to put some more money and to get rid of John Textor and have by themselves a new man in charge, we do believe this is the end of John Textor, and the financial company behind it might go to save what they can save in terms of their investment, and then to go on the market and to sell Olympique Lyonnais, because the quality of Olympique Lyonnais is that this is one of the only French club under the ex-chairman Jean-Michel Aulas to have built their stadium, to be the owner of their own stadium. They have something which is, I would say, a wealthy situation of behind. Because for some of the French clubs, they don't have anything. They have the players, they go to the stadium of the city council, but the club is nothing. Lyon is a strong, not financial, but strong company in terms of what have been done before John Textor. They did great job in the last 25 years.
Got you. Eric, thank you for your involvement in this story as far as we're concerned this morning. League 2 football for Olympique Lyon, and John Textor's somehow got to get round that, his head round that, and work that out. They're appealing, but now, as you rightly say, and I hope you're right, it does pave the way, I'm sure, for Crystal Palace to play Europa League football next season. Merci bien, Monsieur Biederman. Thank you as always. Hopefully that has somewhat cleared it up, but we'll keep an eye on it. Jim White, Simon Jordan, Danny Murphy, live in talkSPORT. Wow. Well, we held on to that story for quite a bit because we felt obliged to, and Palace fans have been getting in touch with us. Eric Bieldeman, the French journalist, has just been speaking to us with all that's going on with Olympique Lyon and John Textor's ownership of that and selling his Palace shares. I think Bieldeman has told us moments ago, it still does clear the way for Crystal Palace to play in the Europa League.
For Palace fans, they get that opportunity in Europe. That's the key to this.
They just want clarity, don't they? That's all.
I think they'll get it. I think I've always maintained a position from the outset that I thought Palace would qualify for Europe because they've done it on merit, and I'm sure that they will.
We've got to move on because we have a very important man waiting to speak to us down under in Australia. The Lions in Australia are building up to their first warm-up game this Saturday against an outfit called Western Force. It's live on talkSPORT. But just yesterday we were discussing the situation whereby the Australia head coach Joe Schmidt had hit back at the Lions after they criticised Joe's decision not to release more senior players for the provincial warm-up matches such as this one against Western Force. On Monday, the chief executive of the Lions, Ben Carvely, said that Schmidt was in danger of breaching the tour agreement if he held his international players back to protect them from injury before the test series proper. Schmidt, though, said no, he's read the tour agreement and that it reinforces his position. Let's get more on this. The legendary Australian international Matt Gayto joins us live on the show this morning. Matt, how are you?
I'm fantastic. I like all this, the build-up. There's already a little bit happening in the media already, and we've not even played a game, so it's good.
Yes. They're kind of tweaking each other, aren't they, before a game is played. What is your take, Matt, on this pre-tour agreement row? Where do you stand on it?
Listen, I don't think you want to know where I stand. I'm always going to be on Australia's corner. No, I think from a player's point of view, you've got through the Super Rugby season. You're now fit, and you're available to play in something, that happens once every 12 years. Especially that Test series. That's big. I mean, I know these exhibition games and when you're playing the Super Rugby teams, they're also important fixtures, for those provinces. But to play for your country in a British and Irish Lions tour, I think that's the precedent. That's the one that every player wants to play in. So if there's a risk of injury or if someone's not quite right, I'd probably rest as well.
Do you see it in any way hypocritical of the Lions, Matt, to try to dictate the Australian team selection whilst 8 players in the Lions were raised in the Southern Hemisphere?
Oh, no, I'm not getting into this one.
Come on, Matt, give us your take on that.
Oh, we got a little rugby podcast and we interviewed Sione Tuipulotu, who he grew up in Australia, played all his rugby here, but he never really got that opportunity. And he went over to Scotland, obviously learn about his ancestry and his roots and how proud he is to play for Scotland and how much playing for the British and Irish Lions means to him. So I don't think it really matters. The way you play and the passion that you bring in every game, shows who you want to play for. And he's comfortable being there. As far as the rest of the players that are born in the Southern Hemisphere, they've moved on. Mac Hansen, another one that I know really well, that's worked hard, tried to get an opportunity here, didn't, went over to Europe and he killed it. So no, I don't buy into that one, but I do buy into the first one.
Excellent. Listen, how's it going down under this upcoming tour? How do the Australian rugby public feel about the Lions coming to town? This is one you dare not lose, isn't it? This series.
I think so, yeah. This is a big one. I think for both, British and Irish Lions, and also for the Australian, the Wallabies. I think to get the fence sitters, I suppose, back into rugby. At the moment, we've got our purists. We'll always have our purists that love the game and support the Wallabies. But those fence sitters that can skip between rugby league, AFL, or rugby union, depending who's playing well, it'd be really good to get everyone on board, especially leading into the 2027 World Cup. So it's a great opportunity for us here in Australia and for the Wallabies to really, bring rugby back.
Matt, Simon Jordan and Danny Murphy, proud Englishmen, are sitting in this very studio. Do you get fired up by a tour like this, Simon? All of a sudden, do you think, come on the Lions?
Yeah, I always like the opportunity to stick it on the Aussies. Whether it be cricket, whether it be rugby, whether they're watching it in Australian tennis players. I don't know whether it was wise for the British Lions to whine about the reality of what the Australians were doing. There's a tour agreement. We spoke to people yesterday. Our guy Andrew McKenna was talking about the construct of a tour agreement. If the basic premise of a tour agreement is you make your best players available, and then you get an indication, I don't know why the Australian coach needed to make a noise about the fact he wasn't going to make them available, because that elicited a response. Now, whether we should have risen to that response and allow the Australians, because clearly if they feel they need to rest their best players, is because they're concerned about what's coming their way, and hopefully what's coming their way is problems. So I think we should have probably risen above it rather than indulged it and taken a higher ground of going, well, rest your best players because clearly you need to, because you've got a problem coming.
Oh, yes.
It's not generally the English way to take the higher ground, though, is it?
I don't know about that. Well, it's certainly the Australian way to take the low ground,
Yeah. No, I think the British and Irish Lions, for those midweek games, are they going to pick their best players for those, that potentially could play in this test?
Well, they're going to be hypocrites if they don't, are they? So if they're going to turn around and say, we expect you to honour the principles of the agreement, and then they don't do it, they're going to look ridiculous. So I would suggest to you the answer to that question is, yes, they were. They're going to rotate it. But if the indication from your guy is that he was going to really downplay the kind of players that were available from certain clubs and not play them at all, then they possibly were right to call it out because it's a breach of an understanding, but perhaps they should have risen above it.
Maybe. Matt, let's look at the Australian setup as it stands. Not particularly impressive in the Rugby World Cup in 2023. The Australians fell at the group stages, as you know. What are we looking at now in Australia? What kind of threat do you carry? How ready are you for this Lions challenge?
Well, we'll soon find out. I mean, as far as the World Cup in 2023, I think that was probably as low as the sport's gotten, to miss out on those World Cup finals, and just more the feeling out of that camp was that it wasn't a necessarily happy camp, and I'm not sure they enjoyed that World Cup campaign too much. So Joe Schmidt came in, he's instilled a lot of belief in these players. You can see that enjoyment back, and if the Super Rugby is anything to go by, our players are firing. I'm always going to be biased towards Australian players, but I think this is going to be one hell of a series, and it won't be a clean sweep that everyone's predicting.
Matt, can I just ask a question? Call it simplistic, but if you've got a group of players like the Aussies who are used to playing together and know each other well and have got more rhythm, and you've got the British Lions who are thrown together, if only related to football, and you've got a load of players thrown together to start trying to build some relationships.
Yeah.
Well, surely the Aussies are favourites, no?
Well, not according to the bookies.
No, I know.
And the general public. But yeah, if both teams were evenly matched, I agree with you. You look at on the weekend against Argentina, you had two centres there with Bundy Aki and Sione that kind of performed the same role, and was almost, because they don't have that combination of knowing, okay, I'm going to carry and then you ball play. They're both used to just carrying. They kind of at times were a bit hesitant because you don't want to tread on your new teammate's toes and take his role. So I think there will be some teething issues there with the British and Irish Lions. But the beauty is that they've got, I think, 3 or 4 games before they actually play a test match. Whereas the Wallabies, we've only got the one to try and get it right. As much as they know each other and they've got history in the game plan and how Joe wants to play, I think that first test may be a little clunky.
Eddie Jones is part of our Lions commentary team. Matt, any message for Eddie?
I love you, Eddie. Thank you for picking me from club footy to play my first test. I'll leave it there.
I know what your heart says, Matt. What does your head say about who's going to end up the winners of this series?
I honestly, I really don't know. I'm really confident with where the players are at and the product that they're producing during Super Rugby from an Australian point of view, but I know how dangerous and how stacked that Lions squad is. There were some elements in that Argentinian game where they did click, where Finn Smith would move wider, Marcus Smith would come in and play 10, even though he was a fullback. Just the way they could interchange, for me, was really impressive, especially with such a short run-up into that game. So if they're able to build off that, I think that they'll be able to play a more expansive style. And then you saw against Argentina how brutal they can be up front with their scrums, their lineouts. So it'll be tough. I think what everyone hopes is that it goes for a decider. I'm exactly the same. I hope it goes to the third test where we don't know, and we really maximise this test series.
Matt, you know your stuff. thanks so much for your contribution, mate. Really terrific.
Cheers, thank you.
And the Lions in Australia, it's all building up to their first warm-up game this Saturday against Western Force, and that is live on talkSPORT. We're at 11 o'clock this Wednesday morning.
Could it be Camp Nou beginnings for Marcus Rashford? We gather Barcelona are exploring a loan move for the United outcast. Rory Jennings thinks it's amazing fortune for the forward.
He must have an element of imposter syndrome at the moment. He can't believe his luck. But if he gets the move and he applies himself, it could be the coming of age moment that he needs. It could be the making of him, because he will never get an opportunity like this again.
While Gabby Agbonlahor believes it's a deal that could suit both parties.
If they can do a deal with Manchester United, if they can pay £200,000 a week towards his wages, loan deal for the season, he's not guaranteed to start, he knows that before he comes, then I think it's a win-win.
Next, after Liam Delap opened his Chelsea account at the Club World Cup, former Blue Scott Minto thinks the striker is a shoo-in to be Enzo Maresca's first-choice frontman.
You know he's got the ability,
Yes.
you know he's got the mental strength as well. It's just a question of Chelsea getting the very best out of him and using him. And with what happened with Nicholas Jackson, of course, in the last game, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be the starter for Chelsea.
Lyon say they'll appeal the incomprehensible decision to relegate them from the French top flight over their financial issues. French football expert Lyon and says it's a huge fall from grace under now ex-Palace shareholder John Textor.
Lyon fans want him out of their club because since he took over, Jean-Michel Aulas, who is the historical owner and president of that club, who did so many great things between 1987 and 2019, when he sold the club to John Textor. Lyon were a powerhouse, not just in French football, but in European football as well, in Champions League. But since John Textor arrived and took over that club, it's been an absolute disgrace the way he ran that club.
And following England's second highest ever run chase in the first test against India, our cricket reporter Sam Ellard says Ben Stokes' decision to bowl first was completely vindicated.
On day one, when you got to the grounds and you simply looked up and looked down, it did feel like a batting day, but all of the stats ahead, Lee, show that you bowl first and you bat last on it. And England had a pretty big total to chase down. But that pitch yesterday, for the majority of it, it played pretty well. It was a really, really good batting wicket.
Good morning, everybody. Just gone 11 o'clock this Wednesday morning. We are racing through the month of June. Wednesday, June the 25th. It's Jim White, it's Simon Jordan, and it's Danny Murphy, and we are live on talkSPORT. A lot to get through. There's a fair bit of player movement. What Newcastle United fans do not want to find out is whether or not Alexander Isak is going to be leaving their club, because they love this boy. He's made a major impact in the northeast, but now there's big talk that one of the big clubs might well come in from. Not that Newcastle United isn't a big club, it certainly is in my eyes, but if he goes, there'll be all hell to pay amongst the Newcastle support, no doubt. We'll get to that this morning. Danny Murphy is in our midst. I looked at Matt Guito, the Australian rugby player, and I looked at you and I thought, you're the kind of... Well, he's the Australian rugby equivalent of Danny Murphy.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
He did speak well.
He spoke well, yeah, but as well as that, on the field of play, I wouldn't have thought he was ready at any time to take a second prize, and nor were you. Danny, who's going to take first prize at the Club World Cup? First of all, this man to my left, Simon and I were talking the other day about it. From my point of view, it's grown on me. And I've now got a real curiosity as to who's going to end up at the business end of this tournament. Have you?
No. I haven't watched any.
What?
Oh, you know how much I love my football, but no, I just can't get into it.
Why?
Well, because it's...
You haven't watched any of it?
Well, watching games with half-empty stadiums is tedious anyway. It's boiling hot. The tempo's not great, apart from the South American teams who are A, used to playing in it, and B, in the middle of their season. So that in itself makes it somewhat ridiculous. You've got teams playing who are in the middle of the season. You've got groups of players from Europe who are having a bit of a jolly up because they've got to be there, don't really want to be there.
If Liverpool were in it, you'd be watching it.
Only if the new players were playing, so have a look at them. But no, I've got no interest. I don't think the players who are there from Europe are particularly... I mean, Atletico Madrid going out, they didn't look too bothered, did they? I mean, for me, it's not drawn me in at all. And
so you give the tournament no value?
No.
Martin Samuel, in his column, this is not the meaningless bauble many condescendingly claim it is. On July the 13th, one club, possibly European, maybe not, will be declared world champions.
So they're the best team in the world, are they? Chelsea.
Well, that's what it means.
Chelsea sneaked in fifth in the Premier League, so they'll be crowned the best team in the world. Do me a favour.
When Chelsea won the Champions League, they were considered the best team in Europe.
But we all know the Champions League's got more credentials and more at the moment.
We don't, because what we've done, we've decided. And it's interesting, I don't know what Martin Samuel's original position was, but you'll start to see the narrative change, because it has been condescendingly dumped upon. Everyone's ridiculed it, parodied it, couldn't get broadcast deals, couldn't do this, couldn't do that, couldn't do the other. And now there's Samuel is leading the charge to say, hold on a second here. You know, this is not quite what people are portraying it to be. It's an inaugural tournament. It's got 32 teams. It's got big hitters in there.
But I think teams aren't there through meritocracy.
Well, a lot of them are.
Oh, what, based on whose agenda?
Well, okay.
The governing body creating an agenda to get teams.
But you don't even know
want.
that. What you're doing is you're taking a narrative. How many of the teams do you think have not qualified through merit if you're going to make that statement?
Well, none of them.
Don't be so absurd.
Not really.
Well, they've won their leagues.
Chelsea won the league, did they?
No, Chelsea were the last European champions, but Man City won the league for the qualification criteria that got them into this year's tournament.
Look,
Chelsea and Manchester City are Champions League winners.
Yeah, but they're not there for anything other than money.
Yeah, but every competition's about money. The whole idea.
No, it's about if you win the Champions League or the Premier League, yes, you get money, but it's Danny, historical. You're remembered forever because you won it. Nobody's going to care or remember who wins this tournament.
Know? When the Champions League changed from the European Cup,
it was still a huge trophy.
When the Europa League has been configured, people will take their own particular relevance in that. You've got a new tournament. I'm not necessarily for or against it, and I'm certainly not for Gianni Infantino, because I'm not an admirer of his, and I'm not an admirer of that opaque organisation. But to just take a great big dump on it from a height without really understanding what you're talking about.
Well, I do understand it because I'm looking at it from a footballing perspective.
But you don't know.
Football.
If you're telling me,
well, I know that
statistically 70% of the teams in there are not in merit, but you can't say that. You're picking out individual instances.
You're saying on merit based on somebody's criteria who've made it up for themselves.
But a criteria to qualify for any tournament is based on someone else's criteria.
Liverpool have just won the league. And they won it, under Klopp 2 or 3 years ago.
So the qualification for the inaugural tournament, which had to be planned a year out, right?
Right, so Chelsea above Liverpool, why?
Because they were the last champions of Europe in England.
Right. Okay.
Besides Manchester City, right? So the reality,
Besides
because Man City can't go in twice, you silly
No, I
sods,
know, but
right?
so they're just manipulating it to suit their needs.
No, they didn't.
Well, when it comes to merit, are Tottenham Champions League qualifiers on merit? They finished 17th.
Yeah, but we're talking. You're asking me about a one-off tournament as a spectator. Has it engrossed me? Does it engage
been
me?
talking about the prospect of the tournament, the Club World Cup being staged here in England in future years. Would you buy into that?
Let's look at it a different way.
Would you buy into that?
What was the question? Sorry.
Martin Samuel's saying maybe in the next few years we'll see a Club World Cup such as this being staged here, hosted by England. Maybe. Would you buy into that?
Things can grow on you, but at the moment it's not. You asked me the question, I give you a direct answer.
The important thing is to have an open mind and then to assess it.
It is open, and I looked at snippets of it, and I didn't. I've got no interest.
You said you've not watched any of it.
Well, I've seen snippets, highlights, but I've watched nothing live.
We've seen PSG that were a powerhouse going into this tournament. That have won most of the games, getting beaten by Botafogo. Yeah. And the reaction as a result of it, because the Brazilian teams are doing well. We've seen some of the other.
You've also got what?
What do you mean what?
PSG have just shown they're the best team in Europe by playing consistently well for a period of time.
And they've played against the Brazilian side.
Yes, who are in the middle of the season.
Right.
The PSG boys are probably protecting themselves, ready to have a break and then start a new season.
But you don't know that.
I do, because I've played the game.
Well, okay.
You don't go and play in 90-degree temperatures for a tournament you've never played in, where you're mixing the team up. They're not playing their best team.
I don't know who they're playing. Do you? Have you seen the selections?
Yeah.
You know what they're playing.
So they're mixing it up.
Right, so they're rotating for a tournament like you would, right? And ultimately PSG and their chairman came onto the show and said, the next thing we want to win.
Of course he's going to say that.
Well, yeah, but
you know what people say.
But he's a standard bearer that enforces. I would imagine Luis Enrique wants to be the first winner of the inaugural FIFA World Club Championship because it will have some precedence.
I think he wouldn't care less.
Well, okay, but that's
surely not.
Let me ask you a question.
Closed mind point of view. You're better than that.
If Chelsea win it,
yeah,
right, temporarily, there's going to be some kudos for Maresca and the boys, right?
Of course.
If they lose 3 out of the first 5 games, do you think any Chelsea fans are going to go, we've got to give them time, we just won that World Club Cup? Of course they're not.
Well, but
I think it would change the perception of Chelsea and change the perception of Maresca.
For the Chelsea fans.
If Chelsea win it, does he become the best club manager in the world?
Of course he doesn't.
Of course he doesn't.
Of course he doesn't.
Well, they're the best club in the world.
Hold on, What? And 3 months ago, before they won that
in the tournaments,
3 months ago, before they qualified for the Champions League.
So what does it give you, Simon, to the winner? What does the winner get?
Money.
It gives you a trophy and it gives you money, and they're one and the same thing because we live in a participation sport now. It's a massive thing to get 5th in the Premier League or 4th in the Premier League, play in the Champions League, even if you don't win it.
But the headline news is best club in the world.
Yeah, but that's true.
Chelsea, but that's best club in the world if it's Manchester City. Best club in the world if it's PSG.
But Botafogo win it, and they're the best team in the world.
You win the title.
But we know that
for the time being,
they're the best club in this tournament, right? So if Arsenal had gone on to win the Champions League, would they have been the best team in the tournament? By the nature of the event, yes, they would be the best club in Europe, possibly not.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about is the value of the tournament.
If Liverpool were in it and won it, would they be the best club in the world?
It wouldn't change. My opinion of the best teams in Europe or the world doesn't change based on this tournament, where you've got teams playing. Forget even the heat. Where you're playing against each other, where some are at the end of the season and they're not in the same place, the ones in the middle of the season.
What makes you the best club in the world? Incidentally, Chelsea fan Mark, Jim, Danny Murphy, typical rose-spectacled scouse idiot. You're not. That was a bit harsh.
Well, he's probably somebody who'll be there at Stamford Bridge moaning about Maresca if they lose the first 2 home games, won't he?
Well, they'll moan about him whether he
wins it or not. Correct. There's my point.
What makes you the best club in the world? We're trying to find out
consistently winning
who can be called the best club in the world.
Well, the teams that consistently win the biggest trophies you can win. So Real Madrid have always classed as that because they constantly dominate the Champions.
PSG apparently put out their strongest side to beat Seattle. FYI.
I'd have to see.
So you would say that it's got to be based over the last couple of decades or even longer. Who's recognised to be the best club in the world?
It depends on you're having a conversation with. You can
Real Madrid might be the most iconic, but if they lose the final of this competition, it doesn't make them the best club in the world.
In the last 10 years,
it makes their opponent the best club in the world.
In the last 10 years, you could argue Real Madrid have been the best team in Europe because they've won most Champions League. It's quite simple.
Yeah.
Manchester City have been the best club in it, the best team in England because they've won the most Premier League. It's really not difficult. Best team in the world, then you bring in South American teams into it. It's nonsensical argument. You can never win.
Let's put it out there. Danny, you've absolutely detonated the show at this stage, so let's do it. If Chelsea win it, does that make you, in the eyes of you Chelsea fans, the best club in the world?
Well, of course
if Manchester City win it, and you win the Club World Cup, are you the best that the world can offer right now?
It's a bit like the
Would
Super
you
Cup.
recognise yourselves as the best club? You might want to give us a call on that.
Well, if Tottenham beat
Liverpool were in it and Liverpool won it, you bet Danny would be saying they're the best club in the world.
The Super Cup's a one-off game.
But it's like the playoffs, Danny. If you finish third in the league with 92 points and someone finishes sixth and gets into playoffs and gets 72 points, the team that finished third were the third best team in the league, but they didn't get promoted. But the competition enabled a team that finished sixth. So you have to consider it in the rounds. So if you go and play in the FIFA World Cup Championships and you win the FIFA World Cup, then it has value. I'm not going with the value that he's suggesting, but you're saying it's valueless.
To me.
But it's a silly
There's no value.
But I don't think the Chelsea players or the Man City players
when they get their bonuses
will feel a great sense of satisfaction lifting that.
Of course they will.
If they win it, watch the celebrations.
If they listen to plums like you in the media saying it's of no value, then they might do that. But if people build up,
Simon, you're looking at it from one perspective. I'm being asked to look at it from a football.
Yeah, but you're looking
player.
from a closed mind point of view.
No, from a player's
But Danny,
perspective.
from a player's point of view, and I'm trying to get to a break, but if you were playing for a club at the Club World Championship at the moment in the US, you get to the final and you win it.
Yeah.
Infantino puts your winner's medal over your shoulders.
Yeah.
You look at him and
Say
think,
thank you.
This is valueless. That's what you're saying.
Well, he wouldn't. He's being argumentative. If this was being,
Are you honestly telling us that?
Well,
this medal has no value.
When we won the Super Cup against Bayern for Liverpool, nobody really cared.
If the media had been, if we had wall-to-wall World Club Championships, if this was on mainstream broadcasters and the media had gone, what a tournament, then people would be thinking differently. But because it's been universally dumped on from a great height about what it is and what it isn't, and nobody wants to watch it,
it's like a pre-season
then it
tournament.
becomes centred in his mind. So he's now got prejudicial bias towards it, so he's not going to change his mind. And when he starts watching games, he'll reluctantly start to move away from the fact that it isn't worth watching.
Answer me this honestly in one sentence. If Liverpool were in this, would you look at this differently?
No.
One word will do. Chelsea fans, Manchester City fans, what do you make of what Danny is saying? Give us a call. 03717 223344. Mr. Murphy, sitting opposite me, is holding fast. He's holding out with his view, and why shouldn't he? But how much value do you put in this? If Chelsea end up winning this thing, if City end up winning it, are you the best club in the world? 03717 223344 81089. It's fair to say this discussion that we're having about the merits, the value of the Club World Cup has been, how can I describe it, seismic. An enormous number of you want to come to air. Danny's with me, so too is Simon. And we're talking about the Club World Cup and the value of winning it. We know it's worth 100 million quid. That's what it's worth to the winners. But what is it worth to the players? What's it worth to the club that comes out and wins it? Does it make them the best club in the world? For the moment, that's what's written on the trophy. Yes, it does. When you get that medal put over your shoulders by Infantino, does that make you a member of the winning team which has just won the Club World Cup, which makes you one of the best team players in the world right now?
Oh my God.
Let's get into it more. Danny is saying winning it has little, next to no value.
Watching Man City beat some team 6-0 who I can't remember who they are, that's how important it was. I mean,
it's not going to be like that in the final, is it? Or the semi-final?
But hang on, you got the European Cup, the Champions League, young boys can't get a point.
Yeah, but
that's the configuration of it. No, there's a load of teams in that competition that were absolutely dire.
A lot of teams in this Club World Cup are so far beneath the ones they're playing against.
And there's so many teams in Europe that are so far beneath the powerhouses in the major leagues as well.
Okay.
The Madrids, the Man Cities, the Liverpools.
You would play some poor teams in your Europa League run with Fulham, right? Yes, is the answer to that.
No qualification.
You played some poor teams in the League Cup, didn't you?
If it's staged here, if the Club World Cup is staged here in England in the next, say, 4 years, beyond, and Liverpool are in it and win it,
couldn't care less.
You'll be dancing around,
no, I won't,
screaming from the rooftops that Liverpool.
You can't tell me what I
World
think.
Cup champion. George is a big Chelsea fan. George, I love it when you join us, and you're joining us now. What value do you put on this tournament, and how dearly do you hope that your club Chelsea can win it?
Just before, great show as always, guys. Just before I come on to Chelsea winning it, what it means to me as a Chelsea fan, can I just say something? This is what I was saying last week when I said when Liverpool enter this competition, and I should have said Man United as well, but when Liverpool and Man United enter this competition, it'll be the biggest thing that's ever happened. And Danny will be running down the stairs in his Liverpool pyjamas at 3 a.m. to watch it. He's talking absolute waffle. But going on to Chelsea winning it, if Chelsea win it, they win it, and the name's in the title. It's the Club World Cup. You know, they're going to have that on their sleeves for 4 years, saying World Cup champion.
Yeah.
You know, at the end of the day, that's what it is. If you win the World Cup with England, you're world champions, and that's what it will be. Man City or Chelsea or Bayern Munich, PSG will become Club World champions. Simple as that.
George, here it is, Danny. You can't argue with that, can you?
Well, look, if we all had the same opinion, life would be boring.
No, but no, in this specific point, you cannot argue with George's
Of course, you're going to have a title because we know what the title is, and if you want it on your shirt, you want it on your shirt. The reality is, it doesn't. Winning this ain't going to boost the
George.
Chelsea.
Are you stating the bloody obvious?
The Chelsea players' confidence and ability to win the Premier League next season is not relevant to this.
But this is going to push them on. If they win this as a group of players, surely that's going to give them some momentum and belief that they can go out there next season and perform and compete on every level. It's just before the season starts, they go into the season and every other team's going to be looking at them thinking,
George,
these are the world champions.
You always join us and you never let me down. Thank you so much. John is a Liverpool fan. John, you're bound to side with Danny.
No. Can you hear me, Jim?
Yes, mate. You're through to us. Morning.
Yeah, I'm told opposite from Danny. I think it's the competition's in its infancy. I think the way they've organised it may not be the best, but if you win it, you're the world champions because you've been in it. And when we won it in Qatar, we were the world champions, and we celebrated it, and we wore that badge, and we'd wear it again if we were in it. Any fan of any team going into any competition wants their teams to win it. It's good for the club. It's good for the city. And if we were winning it, we'd be letting you know we'd be world champions.
So there's John, the Liverpool fan, making it clear to you that it's not valueless.
I think fans always like to win new trophies, because especially when, for example, Liverpool, they've won everything there is to win on the planet. So it's another trophy they could put in and go, we've won another one. I get it from a fan's perspective. From my perspective, I understand where it's at the moment. And I understand how those players' mindsets who are out there in the 90-degree heat, having to prolong the season when they really want to just get ready for next season feel. You don't know it, I know it. I've been in pre-seasons, I've been away with England at times after the season's finished. Lads just want to have a break.
There's
they don't want to be there.
Jeff, who's kind of siding with you. The champions of England, Italy and Spain aren't even in it. No, that's true, Jeff. Jason, Chelsea fan, finish this for me. What do you want to say? Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Do I think that it makes us the best team in the world? No, I don't. But how often does the best team in Europe actually win the Champions League? And I just think without putting words into Danny's mouth, and forgive me if I get it wrong, but I believe that it weren't that long ago that you were saying that you always wanted to win every game in every competition you went into.
Yeah, I was talking. Yeah, that is true. That's true from a personal perspective, because you always want to impress the manager and keep your place in the team, and that's just your own personal pride.
So Jason's rumbled you?
No, but he's talking about what it means to the club and how it looks, the perception to everyone else, and you're saying to me it makes you the best team in the world, etc., etc.
Jason, what does it make you if Chelsea win it?
It just makes us that we've won it. It don't make us the best team in the world. It just means that we have that on our sleeve. But personally, if you was to ask any fan across the world who's the best team in the world, if Chelsea was to win it, I very much doubt that they would say Chelsea. Or, I mean, prior to the tournament. So it's when Danny said about them being involved in the competition, when we won the tournament in 2012, obviously the European Championship, I get that. However, it's like, as I say, we have the Champions League, and we've got Tottenham that are going into that, and they finished 17th. So it sort of it makes it a bit of a mockery of it all, really.
Well, how many Chelsea fans went to the Champions League final? Probably, 30, 40, 50,000 maybe. How many will be there in the World Club final if they get to the final?
Yeah, but logistics, though, Danny, it's in America.
It doesn't mean that much then, does it?
Jason, I take it you dearly want your club to win this, mate.
Geography.
Come on.
No, I would like them to win it for
right.
obvious reasons, like Danny said, because it's a competition and you can say that we won it. But without being rude, to bring up how many people will go there, how many people would go to America to watch it? It's just.
Well, how many people would go to America if the Champions League final was there and you were there?
But that's not going to happen.
Come on, but it's a comparison. You're looking at Chelsea fans would travel to America. Yeah. Chelsea fans would travel to America to watch them in a Champions League final if somehow that happened, because they know how big it is and how historical it could be.
Jason, we'll agree to differ with Danny on this one, but thanks for your call. I thought Danny was writing some notes here to bolster his argument, but he's actually drawn a lovely little flower with petals. It's Jim White, Simon Jordan and Danny Murphy live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Could it be Camp Nou beginnings for Marcus Rashford? We gather Barcelona are exploring a loan move for the United outcast. Rory Jennings thinks it's amazing fortune for the forward.
He must have an element of imposter syndrome at the moment. He can't believe his luck. But if he gets the move and he applies himself, it could be the coming of age moment that he needs. It could be the making of him, because he will never get an opportunity like this again.
While Gabby Agbonlahor believes it's a deal that could suit both parties.
If they can pay £200,000 a week towards his wages, loan deal for the season, he's not guaranteed to start, he knows that before he comes, then I think it's a win-win.
Next, after Liam Delap opened his Chelsea account at the Club World Cup, former Blue Scott Minto thinks the striker is a shoo-in to be Enzo Maresca's first-choice frontman.
You know he's got the ability.
Yes.
You know he's got the mental strength as well. It's just a question of Chelsea getting the very best out of him and using him. And with what happened with Nicholas Jackson, of course, in the last game, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be the starter for Chelsea.
And following England's second highest ever run chase in the first test against India, our cricket reporter Sam Ellard says Ben Stokes' decision to bowl first was completely vindicated.
On day one, when you got to the grounds and you simply looked up and looked down, it did feel like a batting day, but all of the stats at Headingley show that you bowl first and you bat last on it.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get ready for the golden era of sports betting. Visit betmgm.co.uk or download the app. 18 plus gambleaware.org.
It's that time. We're joined by Lord Charlie Robertson from BetMGM. We're going to look at some of the events and the odds round and about them. Here's a game that Danny will probably watch, and I wouldn't be surprised if he does. 5 o'clock, live on talkSPORT 2, England's under-21s against the under-21s of the Netherlands. And, of course, it's in the under-21s European Championship. It's a semi-final. Charlie, good morning. What are you thinking?
Morning, guys. Yeah, they obviously had a bit of a rocky group stage, didn't they, England, but were really impressive against Spain last time. We made them just a shade of odds on to beat the Netherlands tonight, 11-10. The Dutch are 23-10, and the draw is 49-20. England are odds on, though, to qualify at 3-5, and the Netherlands 5-4. Danny, I'm not sure if you have been watching this tournament, but from what you have seen of England...
You've been watching it, Dan?
Sorry, I missed that. Did you ask me a question? I didn't have my headphones on.
Have you been watching this tournament?
I just said, have you been watching much of of England so far, Danny? And do you expect them to get past the Netherlands tonight?
Well, I think they lost them in the group, didn't they? So maybe that's a blessing, because give them a little kick up the backside, ready for this one. But they did well against Spain. But no, I've not watched every minute. I watched a lot of highlights and stuff. But it's getting to the crunch stage. I'll probably watch it. Yeah.
Oh, that's good of you.
Well, I'm allowed some time off.
Oh my God.
You were watching cricket yesterday.
Oh no, exactly.
Was there value in that?
I'm broadening my horizons.
Okay.
Golf, cricket,
Yeah.
paddle.
Excellent. Okay, so run us over the odds again, Charlie. England, Netherlands.
Yeah, so England are 11-10, the Dutch 23-10, and the draw is 49-20, Jim. So we fancy England to get through, but not firm favourites, but fancy to win.
Okay, let's not for the first time delve into Danny's golf knowledge, and no doubt he'll do that with your good self, Charlie. The weekly golf chat, and I think it centres around Tommy Fleetwood, does it?
Yeah, there's a couple of things which I'm sure you and Simon will be pleased to hear, Jim. Yeah, Danny, first I just wanted to ask you about Fleetwood on Sunday. I think it's it's 42 top 10s without a win now. We were chatting in the office earlier, and we sort of thought it's a bit like a sort of striker who's going through a bit of a goal drought. Is that how you see it with him? Just got to keep putting himself in these positions, and eventually he'll find the breakthrough kind of thing.
Well, you'd hope so, because he's just so consistent. I felt for him massively. It was so disappointing. I mean, that put on the 18 looked like it hit a little pitch mark, which I don't know how you. What can you do?
That's golf, Danny.
It is, mate. Yeah. No, I feel for him. It's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back. But there's no guarantee in golf you're going to win just because you keep getting close. But I hope he does. He's a likeable guy, isn't he? Everyone's favourite. Everyone's second favourite.
True.
And Danny, I just wanted to ask you about. Obviously, Bradley got the better of him as well. Do you think he'll be?
He didn't answer the question, though, did he, Charlie? Really?
It wasn't a bad answer.
I said I'd like to. I'm not sure.
Is he going for a goal? He said he compared it to a striker's drought. Is it a psychological barrier that he's having to climb through to get to this position where he can?
I think a striker's drought's much easier to get over because you can have a lucky goal. You can't have a lucky winning goal.
Right, it's a better answer.
Thank you. No, it's fair point. Fair point.
Yeah. And then you just want to ask Keegan Bradley. Danny, obviously looks like he's going to be playing captain. What are your thoughts on that one? Do you think it's the right decision for him to be one?
Well, he's got to play, hasn't he? 'Cause he's playing so well. I would imagine he'll just call upon those vice captains around him to take the role while he's out on the course. That's all he can do. He can't not pick himself when he's playing so well because it makes the team weaker. So impressive. I'm amazed it hasn't happened before, to be honest, but I think everyone's looking forward to that. He's got to play, yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Now, Danny was doing cartwheels around his living room yesterday.
I've just got to say, sorry,
remarkable...
England didn't lose to Holland in the Group 21s. It was Germany they lost to. Sorry about that.
Oh, well done with that. When did you say that? Sometime before? Did you? Okay. A remarkable 50 at Headingley yesterday, Charlie, between England and India, and Danny loved it.
I did.
Yeah, I heard earlier how Simon and Danny are big cricket lovers at the moment, so I thought it was worth a quick update on how the markets are looking after that first test, Jim. England just 1-6 to win the series now. India 6-1, which I think looks quite a big price actually. And the draw is at 12-1. I think it's unlikely, Jim, but for those sort of optimistic punters, we're 5-1, a 5-0 England series win. While England to win 3-1 could offer a bit of value at 19-4. But as the guy said earlier, it's a really exciting series, so should be a really good one to look forward to for the rest of the summer.
Charlie, thank you very much indeed. Visit betmgm.co.uk, download the app, 18+, begambleaware.org.
It's showtime on talkSPORT with BetMGM. Get things golden with responsible play at betmgm.co.uk. 18+, gambleaware.org.
It seems to be a morning, Simon, that we're kind of locking horns with Danny.
Only on one subject.
Let's lock them further. It's fair to say, I think you've never been one to place respect on the likes of set-piece coaches.
No, you see, that's not true.
Is that not true?
No, I keep getting misquoted on this stuff.
What do you think of a set-piece coach? The value. We're talking about value, so let's talk about the value of one.
Worth their weight in gold. They always have been.
Right. Okay.
My argument's always been the same.
But you've had a tilt at the fellow at Arsenal, haven't you?
No, I've had a tilt at the fact that they're bringing in an extra coach to do set-piece coaches when they've already got 3 coaches there. So if you're a manager of a Premier League club and you bring in 2 or 3 guys with you and then you have to bring in a set-piece coach, what are those coaches doing? So my experience has always been that one of the coaches I work with, one of the coaches under the manager will do set plays and work damn hard at them. But to actually bring someone else in, I mean, what are the other guys doing?
So are you of the belief that coaching is a jack of all rather than a master of one?
No, I think you can become specific in one, but if you're a coach...
So a goalkeeping coach would just work with goalkeepers, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Right, so a set-piece coach will just work with set-piece and hone that skill.
Not just set pieces, but partly, yeah, which would be in your remit when you come in under the manager.
Right. So what's your problem then?
Well, the problem is that you bring in 3 coaches and none of them are good enough to be a set. What are they doing?
I don't know.
Well, exactly.
I'm sure the manager must be able to spell that out.
Well, you've got more staff now than ever before.
Defensive.
We can go into great detail about because I've spoken to a lot of managers and coaches about this, and some of them are on
and they all say you're wrong.
No, they're on my page. Set pieces are really important, but the reality is
are you speaking
they're
to an echo chamber?
somebody in the hierarchy is bringing in a set-piece coach that the manager or coach already has people doing and doesn't need.
Well, surely the manager would be doing that. I mean, I realise that if you speak to people that have the same mindset as you, you're going to get your confirmation bias confirmed. But surely you bring in a set-piece coach because it adds that extra margin of difference.
If he's better than what you've got already, yeah. But what's the point of having the ones you've already got? Why do you need three coaches?
They must have specific tasks, mustn't they?
But there's only so many tasks you can do as a football coach.
But the game is expensive.
It's offensive or defensive.
Yeah, that's two.
That's it. And then you've got your set play.
See, it boils down to the fact that this set-piece coach, Keith Andrews, at Brentford, has been doing a very good job, it would seem.
Absolutely.
And now...
But I'm sure he's a coach.
Apparently, it's a matter of time before Keith is announced as the man to succeed Thomas Frank.
Good luck to him.
So, whatever he's been doing has caught the eye.
But there's no way...
And his reputation is such now that they're giving him the job.
Which means he's got other armoury, hasn't it, obviously?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you in your vast experience of set-piece coaches. Would that likely mean that he would have been able to exhibit in that role the kind of characteristics which would have caught the eye for a management
but
position?
He wouldn't have just been doing set plays.
But that's my question.
Yeah,
is it a forced characterisation when he's put forward as the set piece
maybe.
guy? So is it a forced characterisation?
I think possibly sometimes coaches get. He's a set piece coach and doesn't do anything else. I'm sure. For example,
so he does the balls, the bips, and the cones as well.
Maybe, but at Liverpool, Phil Thompson did a lot of the set plays. Now Tomo was one of the best defenders in Liverpool's history. And he did a lot of work on the defensive stuff as well, and he was a good coach. And when he had to fill the shoes of Julio, he adapted himself brilliantly to do the manager's role for that season. So just because you're a set-piece coach doesn't mean you can't do the other stuff. You've been brought in as that, and that's my point. My point is, if you've got a team of coaches that you employ at the beginning, why you need to bring in an extra one and name him a set-piece coach? It's all a bit much.
If you were offered the job as a set-piece coach at a club, decent money, would you take it?
It depends. It depends.
And what would you expect your tasks to be if you were?
I don't know. That'd be a conversation with the manager and the CEO, wouldn't it?
Well, it does seem like Keith Andrews is going to be named. We were saying this yesterday, though, Simon, weren't we?
Well, I've seen Keith in punditry, and he always speaks really well. He was a good player.
Yeah.
Not according to Martin O'Neill, he
doesn't like him now.
Because Martin O'Neill's on.
No, I think he comes across well. I like him. I'm surprised in that his CV isn't stacked.
So if you were watching Brentford's team last night and their set pieces went to pot, what would you say? All of a sudden they weren't delivering good set pieces.
I'd find it bizarre.
Still no confirmation yet, as yet, that Keith Andrews is in at Brentford, but apparently it's a matter of time. We'll keep a lookout for that, and as soon as we know, you'll know. We're live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. say Basil, I say Basil. The reunion of the century is just around the corner, and we're giving you the chance to win a pair of Oasis tickets in Manchester on July the 19th. You heard that right. Oasis Live 25 sold out, but you can go. Alongside the tickets, you get put up in a hotel for the night, $5,000 in your back pocket, completely tax-free. Listen up. Here's everything you need to know about how to enter.
Alright, kid, you have to be over 18 to enter in the UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay and $5,000 spending money, all you gotta do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, PO Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Okay, you could get to see Oasis if you enter that competition. Noel Gallagher means what he says what he means. Very much like one of our guests tomorrow, Simon. Looking forward to you locking horns, engaging with former tennis star Nick Kyrgios.
I'm trying to rack my mind as to what I've said about him, knowing full well that you are going to play it out in front of him. I think I was critical. I think I was critical of his observations about sister pass. I think I was critical of his observations about crowd behaviour.
Yeah.
I think I was critical of his observations about the tour that Djokovic put forward. And I think I've said that he's an outstanding player and should concentrate more on his game rather than giving other people advice. So no doubt all of that will be played out in front of him.
It will be. You made a note of all of that.
He knows it.
You look, thumbs up.
I'm sure he knows it already.
Thumbs up through the glass. It's going to be lively, Nick Kyrgios.
They won't play the good things I've said about him.
Do you like the guy?
I like aspects of him. I like him. I think he's a remarkable tennis player that's not fulfilled his potential and should have won tournaments.
Is he packed in now?
I don't think he's packed in, but I don't think he's operating at the level that he was, because look at his age. But he is such a prodigious talent, and for not to have won the things at that talent.
Yeah.
And I like the fact he's plain speaking, and with it comes things that people will say that you don't agree with.
Right. Well, Nick Kyrgios will be live with Simon and myself tomorrow morning, and that could well get lively, as it has done today with Danny Murphy. Do you like Danny?
Very much.
Yeah, me too. Danny, here's the thing. At the start of the week, we saw Alejandro Garnacho, a post that he put out on social media. And this was himself. Did you see it? Yeah. He was wearing an Aston Villa shirt, and as Simon said, he was walking over to, what was it, a Bugatti or something?
A Lamborghini and a Ferrari. I was just conceptualising the world that these kids live in, that no one can relate to. A young kid, 20 years of age, and look at his world. His world is, I'm on holiday, getting paid £250,000 a week, and my world is rocking in front of £1 million of cars, and then we got to relate to all the things they do.
Yeah,
or the world has got to.
And while he was doing that, Marcus Rashford was being interviewed by a Spanish YouTuber about talking about his ambition to play with the likes of Lamine Yamal at Barcelona next season. Do you think there's always going to be a club out there willing to overlook what these guys may or may not get up to off the field and take them for their on-pitch ability?
Pretty much, if the finances are right. And United are that desperate to get rid. I mean, Garnacho's a younger talent, and someone will feel like they can rein him in a little bit, because he's got a lot about him on the pitch. I like him football wise. I find it's a bit strange trying to comprehend some of the things I see in players doing, because it was just so normal for me as a young lad when I went to Liverpool to be discreet to a degree and make sure other people were always keeping you in your place. There was no opportunity to be that way. You know, the thought of putting on another team's shirt.
You'd never have done it.
I mean, God forbid. It just wouldn't enter your head. But maybe that's something to do with role models, or I don't know. I walked into an environment, it wasn't perfect at Liverpool. The discipline had gone a little bit in some respects. But in terms of how you act and how... You know, I remember, I've told this story before, but I remember months in, I was in a little Fiat I'd had.
Robbie Fowler.
And Robbie said to me, well, you can treat yourself to a... And I was thinking, oh, okay. You know, but I didn't want to go... And it was just how we were taught, and how you didn't want to become that person where people think you're above your station. Even like the colour of your boots. Or wearing leggings in the winter when it was freezing cold and snowing, and you had the nerve to put leggings on because the people were doing it, and Ronnie Moran would go, Get yourself in. Take
So
them
today, do you look at that picture of Garnacho? Can you still not get your head around it? He's wearing a Villa shirt and he's in amongst some of the most expensive sports cars you could ever imagine.
I don't.
And Rashford's name's on the back of his shirt.
I don't dislike him for it. I sympathise with him because I don't think he's got good people around him, and that's a big problem for young footballers.
Do you need to sympathise with him? He's got a few quid now.
Well, maybe not sympathise, the wrong word. I
empathise.
Empathise a little bit, yeah, because when you become really wealthy and famous, whatever level, you're going to make mistakes. And you do learn from them, hopefully, but you need some good people around you, keep you in check a bit, and guide you through. And if he's only got a lot of people around him telling him how wonderful he is and how amazing you are, you tend to start believing it.
Would you, as an owner, tend to veer off in terms of interest in someone like Garnacho because of what you've heard and because of what you see about a lad like that?
Degrees of scale, isn't it? We're talking about two Man United players, so it's no surprise that the culture of Man United is allowing this to maintain itself. I had players, not with the profile, but we had players that did things that were silly, and I really concentrated in mind whether it was Clinton Morrison or certain other young players that were perceived to be young starlets, and they got told in no uncertain terms.
By you?
Yeah, they got told. But
what did you tell them?
To straighten up and fly right. And don't miss the opportunities in front of you. You have a responsibility to represent this football club to the highest standard, and if you don't, I'll wring your neck.
And that's so much what you need. The other problem for these two lads, well, especially Garnacho, is he's being compared. If you think of United's success and that brilliant crop of young players, superstars, who were humble, well spoke well, kept themselves under the radar because they had Fergie on them all the time. I know Beckham, as he got bigger and bigger, and then Fergie went enough. But most of them, when you think of Scholesy, Nicky Butt, when you think of Phil and Gary Neville, when you think of all of those lads, even Giggsy, who was a superstar, you just wouldn't see these things. You know, I remember Giggsy driving around. I saw him in Manchester once in a little Clio, and he was one of the best young players in Europe. You know, I don't know. Maybe it's time. Maybe it's evolution of football with the money involved. But I do think it doesn't matter what era you're in. If you haven't got good people around you and you just got sycophants and people who want to just blow smoke and take off you,
profit off you,
you're in a world of trouble.
Yeah. I mean, I remember
the only thing we got
Kanté at Chelsea. When he was at Chelsea, he was just driving a Mini.
I know. Well, the saving grace at the moment, when you watch Garnacho, even though he's had a poor season compared to the one he had before, he is young. That happens. One thing with him I don't see really is a decrease ever in his work ethic on the pitch. The quality you can question, or his finishing or end product, which hasn't been great this season.
But he works hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got that fire in his belly, and someone will take him because of that.
What do you think is the upshot for both of them? Garnacho being spoken about in terms of a possible move to Chelsea.
He'll have options.
Fenerbahce. Don't know about that, but he'd end up with Mourinho if he goes to Fenerbahce. Barcelona said to be preparing a loan bid for Marcus Rashford.
Don't see that.
Can you see Barcelona doing that?
Why would you pay $200 or $300 a week for a player who's not going to be in the 11?
Because you don't pay, well, it depends what you'd want to do to supplement your squad during the course of a season, and you offset it against a transfer fee, won't you? If you've got to pay a loan fee, I mean, I think it's puff and stuff by his guys being put out there to increase the value in other people's minds of Marcus Rashford, because Marcus Rashford seems to be the one indexing himself to Barcelona rather than Barcelona indexing themselves to him. He's the one that keeps on saying, "I'd like to play in Barcelona. I'd like to play with the young kid at Barcelona." I'm sure they'd be delighted with the influence that you'd be able to have on that young kid, given the standards he's set right now and the standards you don't set right now, Marcus.
Right.
I think the big challenge is how do you square the Garnacho one will take care of itself. Someone will buy him.
I think so.
And it's all profit in that as well. The situation with Rashford, which has all profit attached to it as well, is that someone's going to have to take a view on the fact they want some money for him, and no one's going to take both. No one's going to take 40, 50 million quid on Rashford and a £300,000 wage bill.
No.
Someone will pay 30, 40 million quid for him and pay him 150 grand a week, but they won't pay him £3. So if he wants to play for England next summer, if he does, and if he wants to continue to find a way to play his football, given the fact he seems completely out on the radar now of Man United, it doesn't seem that he's going to come back into the mix.
No.
It's the curious thing is how they're going to create this. And there's going to have to be some creative thinking, and someone's going to have to take a view. And I'm not sure that Man United are readily of the mindset to take a view. So the player's going to have to take some, because the player's attitude will inevitably be, and I hope I'm wrong, I'm not taking a single penny. In fact, I want to be paid on the way out. That'll be his attitude. So
I hope you're wrong with that as well.
So do I. Because if he wants to play, he has to take a view that he is the reason why. The reasons why Marcus Rashford finds him in a position on the outs is not because of anybody else. It's because of Marcus and his outlook and his attitude. And then the reasons why we talk to Man United fans, or have done previously, and I don't know a Man United fan that's come on this station recently over the last 12 months and had a good word to say about Marcus Rashford.
No.
In fact, they've been really extreme
Really
about
outspoken
get
about
rid.
it.
The only thing he's got in his armour is because of his age, really.
Yeah,
and his value decreasing.
Yeah.
A loan wouldn't suit United.
Do you think on both of them, Danny?
Anyway, they don't want to. They want to sell him.
Definitely, I would have thought you'd think yes with Garnacho. I don't know on Rashford. Do you think we're still to see the best of both of them?
I think we've seen what Rashford's capable of. That's his best. That season he had. That's the best he can be. Can he reach that again is a question mark.
Right.
He's going to need a really strong manager who takes him in and finds a perfect role for him in the team and gives him the freedom to be that person. We certainly haven't seen the best of Garnacho, no.
Okay.
He's got a good chance if he can cut out the nonsense.
Yeah. That is the latest. Maybe Chelsea, Fenerbahce looking at Garnacho. Marcus Rashford could well be that he ends up at Barcelona. But there's a bit more talking to be done yet. And as Simon rightly says, it may well be he'll need to take a trim around that £350,000 a week salary that he is on. It's Jim White, Simon Jordan, Danny Murphy. It's Wednesday lunchtime and we're live on talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes.
Could it be Camp Nou beginnings for Marcus Rashford? We gather Barcelona are exploring a loan move for the United outcast. Rory Jennings thinks it's amazing fortune for the forward.
He must have an element of imposter syndrome at the moment. He can't believe his luck. But if he gets the move and he applies himself, it could be the coming of age moment that he needs. It could be the making of him, because he will never get an opportunity like this again.
While Gabby Agbonlahor believes it's a deal that could suit both parties.
If they can do a deal with Manchester United, if they can pay £200,000 a week towards his wages, loan deal for the season, he's not guaranteed to start, he knows that before he comes, then I think it's a win-win.
Next, after Liam Delap opened his Chelsea account at the Club World Cup, former Blue Scott Minto thinks the striker is a shoo-in to be Enzo Maresca's first-choice frontman.
You know he's got the ability.
Yes.
You know he's got the mental strength as well. It's just a question of Chelsea getting the very best out of him and using him. And with what happened with Nicholas Jackson, of course, in the last game, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be the starter for Chelsea.
Lyon say they'll appeal the incomprehensible decision to relegate them from the French top flight over their financial issues. French football expert Lyon and Palace says it's a huge fall from grace under now ex-Palace shareholder John Textor.
Lyon fans want him out of their club because since he took over, Jean-Michel Aulas, who is the historical owner and president of that club, who did so many great things between 87 and 2019, 1987 and 2019 when he sold the club to John Textor. Lyon were a powerhouse, not just in French football, but in European football as well, in Champions League. But since John Textor arrived and took over that club, it's been an absolute disgrace the way he ran that club.
And following England's second highest ever run chase in the first test against India, our cricket reporter Sam Ellard says Ben Stokes' decision to bowl first was completely vindicated.
On day one, when you got to the grounds and you simply looked up and looked down, it did feel like a batting day, but all of the stats at Headingley show that you bowl first and you bat last on it. And England had a pretty big total to chase down. But that pitch yesterday, for the majority of it, it played pretty well. It was a really, really good batting wicket.
Mid-mornings and into the afternoon as well. It's 4 minutes past 12 noon. It's Wednesday lunchtime. It's Jim White, Simon Jordan and Danny Murphy, and we are live on talkSPORT. As always, we're streaming live on YouTube and your smart TV. For all the information on how to watch the show, and many of you do, just head to talksport.com/watch. We have a lot to get through in the final hour, excuse me, and a lot to look back on as well. And on that very topic, yesterday, Simon and I were in conversation with a young gentleman called Moses Swaibu, a former footballer, of course, and the reaction to this was really off the scale. Moses Swaibu was a player who was at Simon's Crystal Palace Academy and called Simon Mr. Chairman, and still calls him Mr. Chairman, even now, when he joined us yesterday in studio. But to tell you more about Moses' story, he was a decent player, Simon, was he not? At the age of 16, he had been spotted playing for Croydon Schools.
Yeah, he was a young talent.
He was a young talent who showed a lot of promise and ended up at Simon's Palace Academy. And he was eventually offered a professional contract and awarded the Scholar of the Year and Vice President's Young Player of the Year in the 2006-2007 season. Then he went on to play for Lincoln City and thereafter play for non-league Bromley. And that's where his problems really arose. And his problems became massive because temptation was too much for a young Moses Swaibu. And he spoke yesterday about his time at Lincoln and then at Bromley and how he was approached by a match-fixing syndicate and he got sucked in and it led to him doing time in prison. This was Moses Swaibu.
We was actually approached at the hotel by the teammate. So we was playing Northampton away. Myself and the person I was rooming with were called down to the room and we literally were told, here's £60,000 if we concede a goal within a specific time.
It was in a duffel bag, the 60 grand.
Bag. The actual senior player had taken that on a coach in the change room. At that time, Chris Sutton was our gaffer. Ian Pearce was just coming into the club. So all of the players were on the bench, and more importantly, the following day, the money was just handed back to the individual who had came. We were told, don't say anything, and more importantly, it doesn't really matter. So when I've dropped into non-league, we're having a jog around Bromley's training ground and a teammate was like, hey, there's a meeting tomorrow. At that time, we weren't actually paid. So when I signed, we were getting half check, half cash. So players were used to brown paper bags at that time. So whilst some players, weren't actually getting their wages, he was like, look, let's just go to this meeting to meet match fixers. Then alarm bells rang in my head and I'm like, I know what that is. This is what happened in Lincoln. I think between Mayfair and Bromley at that time, whilst we made a trip into central London, no one was really aware of what was happening or what we're about to encounter.
And what did you encounter?
So we met the first syndicate, who were Chinese. So there was a Chinese syndicate. The main person didn't speak English. We were told, if you lose tomorrow and you concede in this moment, you'll be paid in excess of £100,000. Here's £5,000 for coming to the meeting. If you don't want to do it, keep the money, no problem.
And they went on to keep a lot of the money. And for Moses, it was the start of a serious downward slide, not only in his football career, but in his life in general. He ended up at a trial in a court in Birmingham, and a second trial was the one that did for him. And he ended up going inside and is now out and is now telling others about the downfall that he experienced and why, if you're tempted to get into anything like this, do not do it. Moses Swabu trying to give back in terms of the experience he went through. He doesn't want others to fall into the same trap. Danny is with us this lunchtime. Before I get to Danny, what was your takeaway on yesterday, Simon?
Well, there was an element of sadness about the journey, the opportunity that he'd been given and what it turned into for him. But there was also an element of respect from me. I didn't admire his journey. I told him that. But I do admire the outcome, because I think that people are able to make mistakes in society. They do get consequence, and he was.
Can I say something here? I heard that you were outside and you encountered him outside the studio very briefly. Mm-hmm. But you didn't have anything really to say to him. Well, you just wanted to talk to him once you were in here live with me.
Yeah, not really, because the subject matter that I was being asked to talk about was a young player that had been given an opportunity to be a product in an academy which I took great pride in, that had in part betrayed the industry that he was given an opportunity to be in. So I wasn't impressed with the subject matter from first outset, and written a book, and I felt to myself, well, here's an opportunity for you to redeem yourself, and perhaps you're monetising it through books and telling people how to do things. But when I listened to Moses, I think that he has suffered for his actions. I think also his background come into play, and I think there is elements of lessons that can be learnt about outside influences. If this was in the Premier League, you wouldn't see it, because the visibility of it would be so clear that any kind of corruption element would be pointed out very, very quickly. Because it's further down the pyramid and goes beneath the radar.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean the betting industry is bad per se. It means that the people that decided to do the things with these kids, and that the way these kids are brought up in life, the society, the background they come from, perhaps needs more care and thought.
Yes.
And introducing into these kids' minds the opportunity that they have, the responsibility that goes with it, and to, in the same way you talk to your child about not talking to a stranger in a park, you should perhaps be talking to young kids in academies about the risks of being approached by people that would introduce this into your thinking and what that means for you.
I mean, these were seriously bad people, Danny, as you might imagine. And for Moses Swabu, he went from being a very promising young footballer to the next biggest decision that he would make would be whether he wanted the top or the bottom bunk in a prison cell. Danny, as a former top pro, would it be inconceivable to you that a fellow pro alongside or against you is actively fixing a match that you are participating in?
Yeah, I think so. I was in the game a long time, played in all the different divisions, and never heard a whisper of anyone even being approached. Which, hearing that story there from yesterday, kind of surprises me now, because you know what it's like in football, stuff just travels so quick, even if it's rumour, Chinese whispers, and I never heard nothing. I mean, there has been some famous games over the years.
Were you ever suspicious?
No.
I mean by that, how the hell did he miss that?
I think the only
you know what I mean?
The only game that springs to mind was the Everton-Wimbledon game at Goodison a few years back on it, but that, maybe not go into that, but yeah, that springs to mind as one. I remember being in Malaysia in the World Youth Cup in 97, something like that, under 20s. And it was a bizarre one because we'd never had this before. And we acclimatised in Singapore, then got to Malaysia. And we were in this huge hotel, and we weren't allowed to leave the hotel without escorts. Guard, not the other types. And we were like, what do you mean? We only want to go to the shop, get some grub, or just go get some air, whatever. No, because it was rife that they were manipulating young players.
And you might have been encountered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only experience I've had, and we were all a bit shocked. So we could not leave the hotel without somebody.
Yeah.
But this is not a culture that's alien to football. This is a culture that represented itself in Italian football, in no doubt, during the 80s. And we know players that have played in Italian football that can tell you that. You know, players people that we've known that have been in this studio that work with us that have told me about games that they played in where it's been implicitly understood this game is 0-0. Stop looking forward, start looking sideways. This game is 0-0.
Really?
What do you mean this 0-0? It's 0-0. You know, I remember Trevor talking about these things from his time, Trevor Francis, from his time playing in Italy. So it's not, and there was no doubt in my mind that there was corruption in football. No doubt, from the top to the bottom. It's about where it is corruption. You know, I look at the 2002 World Cup with some of the refereeing decisions that were made, and look at some of the outcomes of some of these referees. One of them was in prison for heroin trafficking. So you look at the situation and say, so there's no doubt about it. Yeah. The other thing that I felt very poignant yesterday was when Moses said to us about coming to the training ground, and that he got there 2 hours before. And the reason why he got there 2 hours before is because he considered it to be his home.
It was a roof over his head.
Yeah. And that to me, and it's very difficult he wanted to look into the background of kids, and it should be the responsibility of football clubs to be able to demographically profile their kids to know what their backgrounds are. And I think that's a little idealistic. But it is also that football does have an element of responsibility to try and make sure that all of its messaging. I think the real reason why Moses ended in the condition that he was in, if I'm honest, is because he got released from Crystal Palace and he was on the downward slide. And ultimately, you don't end up at Lincoln from Crystal Palace if you're on the upturn.
Did you not think, Simon, it was a mixture of naivety and then fear?
Well, what I was also concerned,
and he couldn't get out of it.
But,
greed.
It's greed. But once you've done it, you're trapped. You're done forever then because they've got you by the hook, right? But the reality of what I was more concerned about, and he didn't answer, was why did they alight upon you? Why were you so regularly available? Because it was not just in one environment, you were in another environment. Why were you considered to be approachable?
Well, he said in that, didn't he? It was teammates both times.
But why? If I'm a teammate and I walk up to another teammate that I know that might not be suggestible to this, and I say to you, I can do this, what happens if you run off and tell somebody else? So you must believe by telling me that I'm potentially suggestible.
He was also suggesting, Danny, that on a school curriculum, trust and integrity should somehow be taught to kids, as it's vitally important at some stage in their life. And he's right.
Well, I think there's a lot of topics that aren't taught in schools that could be very beneficial to kids rather than some of the nonsense they got.
That's a parental responsibility.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, but he was looking for, as you said, he was looking for a roof over his head at the training ground.
I understand that, but what he's talking about in the broader terms is I know that we have to take it down to the lowest common denominator, which is the anecdotal evidence which is given relational to him.
Yeah.
But to suggest that you teach character integrity in schools, yes, that should be there. But the basic premise is we need to uptick the parenting responsibilities in this country from what people expect the state to pay for, through to the characteristics of single-parent families, through to the characteristics and responsibilities of fathers that abdicate responsibility, through to the life lessons that we expect our children to follow. And it comes from the parents. Too many people abdicate responsibility for their own basic fundamentals. And getting a teacher to teach somebody integrity, they should be reinforcing it.
Yeah, really, that's better.
Not introducing it.
Yeah,
I think actually
Moses Schreiber, it was quite a chat.
I think probably my last word on it would be that awareness is key for young footballers until unfortunately, some of the stuff I experienced, not only when I'd made the mistake. If we've got these wonderful academies now with so many good role models in the academies and getting the kids at such a young age, 6, 7, 8 now, and you're building them through the academy, I think that's certainly an area where another topic that could be introduced. Yes,
they should be. I mean, what should happen in academies is not a difficult thing to do. Is to get the kids together at certain age groups and talk to them about the vagaries and the challenges of a betting community, and say if you were ever approached on this level,
this is what you do.
This is what you do.
A lot to get through before we get to 1 o'clock. Jim, Simon, and Danny live in talkSPORT with Selco, where the trade goes. gone 12 this Wednesday lunchtime. 1 week today to the start of the Women's Euros, the 2025 UEFA Women's European Championships. And it runs all the way through until July the 27th in Switzerland. England in a tough old group. Group D, England, France, Netherlands, and Wales. How's this going to work out? Catherine Batty, the Telegraph's women's football reporter. Catherine joins us live on the show. Good afternoon to you, Catherine. What do you think? What are England's chances going into this? Because at the end of the day, they're defending their title. They want to retain this thing.
Yeah, it seems like a crazy thing to say that the current holders of the tournament could face, a group that they potentially might not get out of. But that is, the realistic how it stands at the minute. I mean, France and Netherlands are going to be two really, really tough games, and Wales obviously in there as well, are a tricky team to play against. I do think if England play to their best, they should still get out of that group, but they've been so unpredictable in the last year, it's really kind of hard to know which England's going to turn up and are they going to be consistent, because the camps that we've kind of seen over the last 12 months is they win one game and then, they lose the next. And at a tournament, you've got to be, near to perfect. And it's going to be a difficult group for them for sure.
Catherine, I mean, at one stage, this England team, this England setup could do no wrong. Do you think the shine has gone off them maybe in the last 6 to 7 months?
I think part of it is because how other countries have got better as well. I think, that tournament in 2022, they were brilliant, and it felt like everything they touched turned to gold. When they made the World Cup final a year later, they didn't play anywhere near as good as that. They got a little bit of luck at times still, but they weren't really quite at the same level as they were kind of in the Euros. And I think the standards just got better. I think the team's changed as well with England. The players have retired. There's been a changeover, some younger players coming through, and maybe they've become a little bit predictable. Serena Wiegmann's been there 4 years now. When it was her first tournament, people didn't really know what to expect as much. And I think now she's been there for a long time. Maybe, we've kind of not seen England evolve as much as they should. I think they have evolved a bit, but maybe not quite as much as they should have done in the last 4 years.
Danny's alongside me, as you know, Catherine, with Simon. If this was a men's team and what happened with the women's happened in the men's squad, there would be a big investigation going on, Danny, in terms of Midday Earps, a goalkeeper, pulling out alongside Millie Bright. Of course, very important player. Fran Kirby retiring pre the Euros.
Yeah, probably. I still think it's been pretty big stories. We did it a few weeks ago, didn't we? I mean, in isolation, you can understand each one's reasons. I don't think. I mean, my understanding of it, listening to people who know more than me, is that there's an abundance of talent ready to replace them anyway. So it's not as catastrophic as maybe some people are suggesting. Would you agree with that?
I think it depends. It's fine until England suffer any injuries or suspensions at the tournament, isn't it? I think, at the minute they've got the players to replace them. But if Hannah Hampton, for example, picks up an injury or gets sent off in a game, the two goalkeepers behind her have never played for England, and suddenly it feels like you're throwing a rookie in. Millie Bright not being there, she probably would have been the first reserve behind Alex Greenwood and Leah Williamson at that centre-back position. Those two are very, very strong together, but take one of them out, suddenly it doesn't quite look as strong as it did before. And obviously with Fran Kirby, it was a bit of a different situation because she'd got told she wasn't going to be going. So obviously all three were kind of grouped together, and they were kind of different reasons. But it's fine until it becomes a problem, essentially.
Yeah,
Catherine, is the 11 set in stone, or is there still a good few places up for grabs, would you say?
I think the majority of the positions probably are set in stone. I think the one that we're not sure about is the left-back position, and that's kind of been the area of weakness. We've not really got an out-and-out left-back, and naturally left-footed left-back in the squad. It will probably be Niamh Charles or Jess Carter that plays there. Niamh Charles does at least play there for club, whereas Jess Carter tends to sort of play centre-back. And the other position is probably in the forward area. It's whether Lauren James is going to be fully fit enough to start that first game, or whether she's going to have to be eased into the tournament. I think Alessia Russo and Lauren Hemp will be two of the three up front, and it's who takes that position on the right. And it could be one of Lauren James, Beth Mead or Chloe Kelly, depending on who Vegan goes with.
Well, it's almost upon us, Catherine. One final one from me to you. What does success look like in terms of England going into this? What's the bare minimum?
For me, I feel like it does have to be semi-finals, because the last time they didn't reach the semi-finals of a tournament was 2013. I think quarterfinals would be disappointing, but if they were to come second in their group and then play Germany in a quarterfinal and go out, you could understand, and I think you could maybe accept that a little bit more. I mean, if they go out in the group, the last time England went out in a group in a women's tournament, it lost the manager, Hope Powell, her job. So, I think everyone is expecting England to get out of that group, despite the fact that it's going to be very tough for them. But for me, I think a semi-final, and then if they play Spain in that, if they've topped the group, then I think, that would be a good run.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. Catherine Batty. You can read Catherine's reports throughout the tournament. The Telegraph's women's football reporter. Catherine, thank you for joining us yet again. It all kicks off next week on the 2nd of July, and the whole thing live throughout the talkSPORT network. We're coming up to 12:30.
Could it be Camp Nou beginnings for Marcus Rashford? We gather Barcelona are exploring a loan move for the United outcast. Rory Jennings thinks it's amazing fortune for the forward.
He must have an element of imposter syndrome at the moment. He can't believe his luck. But if he gets the move and he applies himself, it could be the coming of age moment that he needs. It could be the making of him, because he will never get an opportunity like this again.
While Gabby Agbonlahor believes it's a deal that could suit both parties.
If they can pay £200,000 a week towards his wages, loan deal for the season, he's not guaranteed to start, he knows that before he comes, then I think it's a win-win.
Next, after Liam Delap opened his Chelsea account at the Club World Cup, former Blues Scott Minto thinks the striker is a shoo-in to be Enzo Maresca's first-choice frontman.
You know he's got the ability.
Yes.
You know he's got the mental strength as well. It's just a question of Chelsea getting the very best out of him and using him. And with what happened with Nicholas Jackson, of course, in the last game, it's almost guaranteed that he's going to be the starter for Chelsea.
And following England's second highest ever run chase in the first test against India, our cricket reporter Sam Ellard says Ben Stokes' decision to bowl first was completely vindicated.
On day one, when you got to the grounds and you simply looked up and looked down, it did feel like a batting day, but all of the stats at Headingley show that you bowl first and you bat last on it.
Boxing Update on talkSPORT with DAZN, the global home of boxing. Buy now at dazn.com/boxing.
Now then, this weekend, do not miss a massive showdown. Jake Paul. Whatever you think of Jake Paul, he takes on the former world champion Julio Chavez Jr. live this Saturday, only on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com/boxing. Is that where boxing's got to, Simon? Jake Paul fighting a great like Chavez Jr.
Yeah, to some extent, yes. But when people classify it as boxing or they classify it as entertainment, it's the Disneyfication of that particular sport. And Jake Paul, whatever you may or may not think about him, is a phenomenal broadcaster in certain respects because of the revenue that he generates through the interest that he's been able to engender.
Sure, the numbers. Quite incredible. Our guest this lunchtime, joining Danny, myself and Simon, works in the sphere of boxing as well as football. Head of Sports and Entertainment at law firm Lawrence Stevens, Mo Pasrida. Am I right with that?
Pasricha, but good.
Pasricha.
Close.
Mo, very good to see you. I think we've met before, probably in and around London at various events.
Bars.
Well, maybe not bars now that
comment.
I'm in the straight and narrow. But here's the thing, and I'll put this question out before we get into what I think will be quite an intriguing discussion with Mo. Has sport, and in particular football, in recent times become too much of a playground for the lawyers? Let's get into this, Mo. Mo is working with his law firm, Lawrence Stevens, as I said, and advises and represents a variety of sporting and entertainment clients within the industry on a wide range of issues, from what, Mo? Players' transfers, boxing promotional agreements, commercial opportunities, a whole range of things.
Exactly that. Probably about 80% of my client profile is the individual athlete. So I see it very closely from the individual player, the boxer's perspective, whether they might be a track and field athlete, etc. So that's quite interesting for me because I'm then involved with a myriad of people, you know, all the professional intermediaries, all the other intermediaries that you guys have spoken about on previous shows, and big exposure to what they've got going on and how they structure things.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that on previous shows. On numerous occasions, Simon and I have talked about events which end up with lawyers and courtrooms and sportsmen. Is this a particularly great time for you guys? Because there's been an uptick, hasn't there?
It's a busy time. You guys have already discussed FFP or whatever they're going to start calling this new thing over the next couple of years, and how it's regulating the Premier League. So with new rules, regulations, if they're changing, they're looking to have challenges made to them, which they are, by big huge businesses which are backed by owners with billions of pounds. Then there's always going to be movement and an area that we as lawyers need to be involved in either advising the club, advising the league, potentially advising on the consequential individuals that are involved in around those transactions.
Sure. You think PSR's got to go, Simon, don't you? It's got to change.
Yeah, I do. I don't think it serves the purpose that I might have envisaged it initially was brought in to do. I think all it does is maintains the status quo.
Yeah.
And changes the direction of travel, something that's been ultimately very successful. If you open the Premier League for business, then you have opened it for business. Now to shut it again and suggest that you control it and control ambition, I'm not comfortable with anymore. I thought as an owner, it would encourage the reduction of hyperinflation on wages. It would control transfer fees. It's done none of the above. All it's done is cement those that have already got it into a position where those that want it can't get there.
Well, the thing is, Mo, we've seen clubs employing you guys, the lawyers, to try and get round financial rules. Is that a bad look? Is that an unhealthy landscape?
Well, I think, the rules are there for a reason. They're also, people who draft the rules, the Premier League lawyers who put the rules together have to think very carefully about how they're structured, how they're challenged. In my world, it only takes one word for someone to have a level of ambiguity about it and for it to be challenged. So it comes down to the opportunity for us as lawyers potentially to look at something and say, yes, we agree, we can build an argument around this. One thing to balance, as I'm sure you guys all know, if you're a big club and you're employing top lawyers and you say, this is what my position is, you need to build a position. We're instructed by our client, whether it's got a degree of strength around it or not, it's our job to kind of build up the card stack, so to speak.
Yeah.
And the more lawyers you have behind you, in certain cases, the bigger that card stack becomes.
There's hardly a day goes by that we don't think, this might be the day we hear about Manchester City.
Yeah.
And the 115 cases against them, the charges against them. How seismic is this, Mo, for the lawyers who are working for the club and who are working for the Premier League? Can you give us a scale of this?
It's huge. Thinking about this, the Premier League doesn't have a restriction, like a limitation period. Man City had that 5-year kind of cut off with UEFA, right?
Yeah.
So that's why these 115 charges, whatever it stands at now, goes all the way back to 2009, I think. So there's going to be a big view from the legal industry as to how this is going to play itself out. It's going to obviously have a very big impact on what the other clubs think. Manchester City won the Premier League 3 times, I think, in a certain period of time that they're looking at a number of those rule breaches. It's going to have a big impact and reputational push for those lawyers acting for the club, acting for the Premier League. And if the Premier League lands on the wrong side of that in the court of public opinion, then unfortunately it's going to be something they're going to be scrutinised for.
Yeah.
And maybe that's something will probably be considered going forward, and probably is with the new look at the PSR evolution.
You won't be surprised to hear that Simon can get his head around something like this much easier than I can. What I can't grasp, why is it taking so long?
It's a big case, but I think that's a pretty rubbish kind of answer to kind of give to it in some ways. I think it will. I expect a decision probably before we start the season. I'd hope so, but I think it's important, and I think you guys have distinguished this on previous shows about a sanction hearing as well as a decision hearing.
Yeah.
And I suspect that's where, unfortunately, if you are on the right side of winning, and you've got the opposition party wants to appeal, they will drag it out for as long as possible. So if you kind of look into the minutiae of this case, 115 plus charges, if we're instructed on that matter, you're looking at every single rule breach, you're building a case, and for which there needs to be a full response on every single point. And if you've got a 150 page document that positions yourself, you as the 3-panel arbitration panel sitting there need to make sure you've looked at it from both sides and given it the kind of due process it requires.
Do lawyers engage in delaying tactics?
I think delaying tactics is a difficult way to kind of describe it.
Do you push it in the long grass as much as you can?
I think you have to. I think the honest answer is, if you've got a client that says, I need this to make this as long it out as much as possible, that's probably where we're going to have to be.
Within the law.
Within the reason. I mean, that's our job, to look at the rules and say, can we do this?
You have to examine the motivations behind delaying tactics. Some of it might be investment fatigue in terms of the ability for the other party to meet the financial complexities of such a protracted set of events. So you have to look at the motivations behind delaying.
Yeah.
One of the questions I've always felt that was appropriate to ask a lawyer is about Man City's approach to this particular situation, because a lot of arguments have been Man City can unequivocally, undeniably, irrefutably squash this in 2 seconds, yet they seem to play hardball in about the manner in which they operate. They don't get there quick. They don't seem to want to get there quick. And my sort of simplistic absolute argument is, if you have irrefutable evidence, wouldn't you want to present it as early as you possibly can to reduce some of the ardour of those that are accusing you, rather than make it a 4-act play? If you were on the side of Manchester City with this irrefutable, undeniable evidence, would you appear to be as prevaricative as they are, or would you be trying to get to the bottom line as quickly as possible?
I think it goes straight to the motivation of like where they want to be as a business and as a club, and the answer really is I would probably be doing what they're doing now, because they know the football landscape and the regulatory landscape is moving. And they're very well aware of how quickly it moves. And as people in certain positions of those regulatory bodies move and change, you can allow the passage of time to potentially fall a little bit more on your side. So you may sit there with, the kind of the silver arrow or whatever it might be, silver bullet ready to go. But when you deploy it, how you deploy it, why you deploy it, is all based that current climate, how they as a club are evaluating the landscape for the next 5, 10, 15 years of their business in football.
Yeah. When I heard producer Luke was telling me that you were coming in, Mo, and I was thinking it's not every day we get the opportunity to speak to someone like yourself, a lawyer specialising in sport and entertainment law. I didn't want to pass this opportunity up. And I know specifics, we can't talk about it here, but it wouldn't be right if I didn't mention it. There's hardly a day goes by that somebody doesn't mention to me about one of the ongoing cases, Lucas Paqueta of West Ham, the allegations of spot fixing regarding deliberate yellow cards. I've been in so many black cabs in London. What's the latest on Paqueta? And I don't know. How watertight does a case need to be to bring charges in the first place?
It needs to be pretty watertight, because you have some incredible colleagues of mine in the legal industry who have a phenomenal way of finding their way through a case if it doesn't carry its level of watertightness about it. I've seen that with certain barristers I've worked with who I rate highly, but they're able to navigate their way through, reduce sanctions, find their way to a certain position where they can say, actually, this isn't as bad as it could be. So it has to be pretty much bang on if they're going to be presenting something like that in front of a player.
And Paqueta denies any wrongdoing. Can you see counterclaims coming out of this in terms of any perceived brand damage?
Well, Lucas Paqueta is obviously a top Premier League player. Most Premier League players have an image rights company. They would have moved their image over to that company. That company will enter into commercial contracts with boot manufacturers, brand deals, whatever it might be. Pretty much every single one of those endorsement brand deals that I've ever worked on will always include a clause that will probably click into gear in instances where there's an element of disrepute. And there's, in the States, it's more like a more rights kind of clause. It's far more fledged out now than it ever has been. And it could well allow those brands, if they haven't already, to say, we're going to pause, we'll hold back funding, we're going to suspend this agreement, or take the nuclear option of terminating, because it's just a cloud around that. It's just too much.
But the question is, if Lucas Paqueta were found not guilty of this, would he be able to take some action against those that have accused him?
That's it.
That would be based upon the level of evidence that was brought in the first place and whether it was a reasonable case to have brought. If it was a completely spurious case to have brought, then he might have grounds to be able to sue under it. By the very nature of what he's just said, it would need to be a strong case to have brought it in the first place.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And you've got to build it up from a financial point of view. If you're going to have a financial claim against a third party,
You've got to prove that loss. So the reality is it's going to be very difficult. The second question is, if you're Lucas Paqueta and you're in such a state now with reputational damage, inability to move between football clubs, and your whole career being held in a holding pattern, wouldn't you be able to want to move this a bit quicker? I know I've dragged people into court for fraudulent misrepresentation in under a year. So wouldn't you be pushing for a quicker outcome than the 14, 15 months that this kid's been sitting around?
Absolutely, you would.
And what would be stopping it? If you were to speculate,
potentially evidence that maybe undermines his position. So that's why wouldn't you? You've answered you've said a very good point, Simon. I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, why wouldn't you want to get your career back on track? Where was he at that trajectory? If you take that moment in time, he could have gone to, I mean, you guys will know better than me. Yeah, some of the top clubs in the world.
Sure.
And I'm sure there's opportunities that unfortunately he's not able to take and pursue.
As I said, Mo, he denies all charges. And we're going to finish with this. I mean, you work in a number of industries, from football to boxing, the entertainment industry. How do they differ? Is boxing the Wild West?
That's a good question. You probably ask Simon that. He probably knows better than I do.
Come on, Mo.
Boxing over the last 10 years that I've worked in it has become, the contract level has developed massively. We're dealing now with promotional agreements that are 30, 40, 50 pages. When I started, it was like a 3-page deal, 4-page deal. Pre-me, it's probably on the back of a fag packet, I'm assuming, or a handshake. It has developed a lot. Football, what I would say is that in the years that I've been practicing, one big lead that sport has had, in my personal opinion, is from the world of music. So where you've had these music deals in the 90s where they were really developed and complex with royalty mechanisms and how rights would be used and not used in certain instances, a lot of that has kind of found its way into the world of sport in a good way. We now have far more developed agreements. On any transfer deal that we're working on, we're pretty much involved at quite an early stage, and we need to be, because of all these different mechanisms that are brought in. Whether those different sports are still behind, they absolutely are. Yeah. Football is far more advanced in the world of boxing. There's a licensing regime there behind football, but boxing hasn't really got that, and probably will maybe end up in that position at some point in the future.
Mo, brilliant. Great insight in the space of 15 minutes, but terrific. Thank you so much for joining us. Mo Pasricha,
perfect.
Nearly.
Head of Sports and Entertainment Law at law firm Lawrence Stevens, with us this lunchtime. No doubt we'll see you again, Mo, because it's a fascinating discussion, and Danny always needs a good lawyer. We're heading up towards 1 o'clock. Now, the reunion of the century is just around the corner. We are giving you the chance to see Oasis. Of course, Oasis Live 25 is sold out. We can get you in. Alongside the tickets, you've got a night stay in a hotel, $5,000 in your pocket, completely tax-free. Listen up. Here's everything you need to know to win.
Alright, kid. You have to be over 18 to enter in the UK, excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win a pair of tickets to the most electrifying rock and roll reunion of the century, a hotel stay, and $5,000 spending money, all you got to do is text the word Oasis to 83338 by Monday the 7th of July at 11 p.m. and you'll be entered into the draw to go supersonic this summer. Sorted. Right, here's all the legal stuff. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You've got to have the bill payer's permission or post your name and number to Oasis Prize Draw, P.O. Box 3190, Colchester, CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 10th of July. This is a talkSPORT limited promotion run on talkSPORT, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com.
Been much discussion around the welfare, packed schedules, burnout in tennis recently, and of course we've just seen what's going on with Queen's, and now Wimbledon is coming up. Danny in studio with Simon and myself here. I touched on this earlier with Danny off air, and it was to do with Dan Evans, the British tennis player. Dan Evans is not having it. Dan Evans says in the build-up to this, in this packed schedule discussion, in general, I am fed up with sports people who, when they lose, say, oh, there's an issue. Just effing shake the guy's hand and say, well done. This day and age, somebody is better than someone else. It's always, we're tired. Or if you're sick, you're sick. It's just part of being a tennis player. Tiredness, a schedule. Take time off. It's not an excuse. If you've lost, you've lost. That's it. You found that particularly refreshing, Danny, to hear from. After all, Dan Evans is a top sportsman.
It's really refreshing because it's a good old school resilient mentality that no blame culture. As you get on with the hand you're given and a wonderful opportunity to be a sportsman, whether it be tennis, football, instead of this player welfare nonsense.
Do you think there's too much of an excuse culture these days?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and unfortunately, especially in football, it seems to come a lot from the so-called leaders. You know, and that transfers to those below. And I think it becomes... I've always said the same thing. It's only later when a lot of these players and even the managers come out of it and they look back at some of their interviews and some of their statements and some of their things that come out of their mouth, and they'll be mortified. They'll be in disbelief how entitled they are at times, some of the things that they say.
I mean, the many times you played for Liverpool, and I've often thought this, you couldn't wait to pull the shirt on again. And there must have been times you weren't 100%.
It wasn't just because of Liverpool. I did that. I played football. I would play whenever I could, even when I was done in. Even my last year at Blackburn, when we had a load of injuries, I was playing midweek weekend, getting run around by the end because I was 36. And, you know, a few players were starting to make me look a bit silly midway through the season when I was getting fatigued. I would never say I'm not playing. It's just a mentality. But things change, you know. It's where we're at. People are now looking for excuses. Not all. There's still some players out there. When you think of Mo Salah's a great example, Messi over the years, top players who just put themselves out there all the time. Just get on with it. Never hear Salah moaning about any games he's playing, do you? But some players do, and I think it's across all sports now. It's always someone else's fault while you're not doing well or you're losing.
See, it's refreshing to hear that, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the context that Dan's talking about.
No, I don't particularly, but it's quite refreshing.
And obviously, he's had his challenges in the sport. So he is, a robust character to put himself in the way of some of the travails he put himself in and yet come back into the professional game and overcome those things.
Yeah.
I think, of course, what Danny said is right. Absolutely right in a lot of instances that some of the so-called leaders... That's why I was so surprised with Rodri and what he said last summer.
Strike action.
Yeah, coming out and saying, I think we do this and we think we do that. But it seems to be encouraged and developed and built into people's thinking.
Yeah.
But there are also other sides of the equation. I mean, very few people know that when Joseph Parker fought Joe Joyce, Joseph Parker got knocked out by Joe Joyce, but no one found out at the time that Joseph Parker was seriously unwell before the fight, because maybe there's different sports that lend itself to that sort of culture.
Yeah.
And boxing, for me, is a sport that has an inherent amount of nobility that gets on with these things.
Yeah.
And maybe some of the more indulged sport, and the more money there is in sport, the more indulgence there becomes. And there's a thing about indulgence and about wealth that creates the edges that you once had. They round them off. And sometimes you need those edges, and the things that where you came from and how you got there get lost in the rewards of being there. And some of these other sports that don't have quite the wealth and riches and the privilege around it are the ones where we seem to have the most entitlements.
Be interesting to see the first when Maresca or Guardiola, one of those teams, starts doing badly, or they're playing at midday on a Saturday.
Who first trots it out?
Yeah, after this World Club Cup. Oh my God, we're playing Wednesday night and then Saturday lunchtime.
It's nice and cool.
Yeah. Can't wait to see who wins that though, Danny. Can you?
God, I'm so excited.
It'll be brilliant to see who wins it. Tomorrow, don't forget, he's an outspoken individual. My God, be interesting because there'll be no holding back with this guy. Nick Kyrgios will be in studio joining Simon and myself, and we look forward to that. Danny Murphy, we salute you. Thank you so much. I'll see you tomorrow, mate. We're back at 10 tomorrow. In the meantime, we're bowling up to 1 o'clock this Wednesday lunchtime.